Alright. We are here to talk about Pokemon Warpath.
Alright. So we'll go ahead and open with a couple of reviews.
Yeah. We've got Joe Clone here. We're going to be having him on later on in the podcast with Silver. So that's going to be a fun time.
Sweet. So Joe Clone. Okay, wow. This description of the war with the Pokemon makes for a really engaging narrative. I was having a bit of trouble during Eevee's perspective, figuring out what some of those Pokemon were. Chandelure and Dodrio were did I say that right?
Yeah.
Were the only ones I understood for sure. It sounded a lot like
How the Lematoran spoke Bionicle.
Okay. Which was awesome.
Yeah, so some of the vernacular is definitely from that dialect, I'll call it. But the way that Eevee is describing everything and interpreting the world around him is more how Saphira relates to the world around her in the Aragon
You know
series.
what it reminded me of is when I was in elementary school, I read this book called The Boy Who Spoke Dog. And basically in that story, there was an island full of dogs that had never seen a human. And it was almost like an exploration in linguistics and anthropology as an adult perspective looking back, because you're looking at a culture that's never experienced something. They have a different dialect or a different language and a different way of looking at the world, right? And so you alternate chapters where there's a little boy who gets stranded on this island and he ends up, gradually befriending this pack of dogs. But at the same time, you're in the minds of the dogs and what they're thinking, and they don't have any of the same vocabulary as us. It's very basic. It's like this creature with these weird long pads and these grotesque things, but it's really an interesting, the language they use to describe this creature they've discovered that's very strange. And so that's kind of what it reminded me of, because they don't have any of the same terminology. It's because obviously it's not in English. It's just it's communicating using very basic descriptions
and ideas.
Right?
Yeah, everything that I did in terms of the perspective shift to Eevee is I'm trying to more or less remind the audience is this is not from the perspective of a human. This is not how humans interpret this information. This is not how humans understand things.
And by the same token, I think it's important to think about that whenever you're creating your own world and thinking about, okay, to what extent do I want to use common vernacular, right? If we're in another world, are they going to be using the metric system? No, they're going to have their own way of measuring things, right? Based on the values in that culture. The reason we use feet and to measure things is that in the US here, people would use their feet and their hands to measure things. Horses and livestock are measured in hands, which is actually 4 inches. That's the width of your hand, because that is, they didn't have the same tools that people had elsewhere. And so that's the measurement system they came up with. And so if you're coming up with, that's just one basic example, but if you are creating a lore, where do you draw the line between common vernacular and words that you are creating for that culture, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's just an interesting thing to,
because it still needs to be comprehensible to the people reading it.
Exactly. So, and you don't want to make it so long and dragged out that someone has to learn a language, It's like Tolkien, he didn't intend to publish all of the lore that he understood, but it got published eventually, whether he liked it or not. That being said, as creative storytellers, you have to kind of think, okay, how much of this do I know and how much of it am I going to share and why, right? So anyway, I kind of agree. It's sometimes I was having to really use my imagination to figure out what Eevee was talking about, especially since I'm not as well versed in Pokemon as you guys are. So anyway, Oichi's distress was really good writing. Really shows how much she values the bond between Pokemon and partner. So it definitely fits that Keihatsu's deal at the beginning would scare and scandalize her, given how their relationship has been the last few weeks.
It hasn't been the last few weeks remember. It's only been a few days since they've known each
Yeah, it's
other.
actually only been a few days. And I agree. That one, I think the dynamics in this chapter are some of my favorites so far because, you know, she's kind of an outside perspective. Like, she's a part of this world, so she's like a good gauge for how things are typically done. She's almost like your window into the world in a way, more so than Keihatsu, because he's unique in this world as a king, right? There's not too many.
As a king who inherited the throne.
Exactly. But I mean, she's more of a it's not to say that she's common, because we know that clearly there's some nobility somewhere that she's not telling about because he can see it in her. But she serves as our window into this story, right? And so I really liked that visceral response she had, because I had the same thing. I was like, what?
It's like, wow, dude.
And so she definitely serves as our segue and our connection to the story, I feel like, personally. Okay. Once Keihatsu explained his actions and everything got resolved, it was very sweet. Though I feel like him laughing at her hiccups was a bit much. But they're teens. I'll give them a pass.
I mean, have you never laughed so hard that you started hiccuping?
No, but it was like right after a really emotional. I think that we have a unique relationship in that I have a personality where I tend to dwell on negative things. And once we've talked it over and resolved it, you're really good at kind of segueing me into a different mindset by using humor. And that's just, humor's my coping mechanism too. So not to say that it's masking things, because usually we do that after we've resolved something, but I feel like that was very much us. Okay. In that, you know, they had this really hard discussion. We talked about how we're feeling, why we did the things we did. And now that we've established this, we can move on. And I realize not everyone's like that. And you may not be like, oh, I can't, why would you laugh after such a serious conversation? But, you know, and I get that, because some people might feel that way. For me, I think you were definitely putting a little bit of us into this moment. Like, I don't think the characters are definitely necessarily like us in other ways, but in this particular,
but they can have similar. Yeah. They can have
in this particular moment, I think you kind of put that in because that's what's familiar to you in our relationship. Okay. And so, I don't know. I think that's probably where that came from.
Do you feel like that's a bad way to handle it, or?
Not for us, but I think everybody's different, and not everyone will understand, like, wow, what an a-hole. He just starts laughing after they had this serious discussion. But I mean, you know, I think everyone's gonna.
I feel like laughing in response to fear or relief is not so strange a thing anymore, I don't think.
Okay.
But I don't know.
We can also relook at how it was worded and see if anything was miscommunicated there too. Because and I think for me, a lot of times the way you word things, when you're reading it to me, it comes across to me completely different from when I'm reading it on paper. Okay. Because the way you read is very dynamic, and sometimes if I'm just reading it on the paper, I'm like, this is a bit crazy. Like, and so
the way that I saw it was that, like, he was laughing at the situation more than anything.
No, yeah.
He wasn't laughing at her.
No, yeah. And I got that, but that may be something to think about. Like, how can I make sure my audience knows he's not being an a-hole right now, right?
Well, he says he's like, I swear I'm not laughing at you. He's like, I'm not laughing at you. He's like just the hiccups are funny.
Yeah. All right. What part of the game comes next after the first Ignis conflict? Is it what we'll see next?
So, the second question will be answered a little bit more during this coming chapter. So what happens in the game is Ignis tries to invade you, you repel them, and then you go on the counteroffensive.
Okay. And you said,
and from there you have the opportunity to take Fontaine and Greenleaf.
Nice. And then we'll address what happens next right in a minute after this next review. And I'll see y'all then. Thank you, Joe Clone.
Thank you, Joe Clone.
All right, Silly Kita, ladies and gents, we have violence.
Violence.
Finally. That's so funny. Sorry. I can tell you're really putting in effort to make an OC with a very different disposition to those who have gone before him. Oh, that's interesting. Because other people have said, you'll hear in a bit, other people are not totally agreeing with you, but I'm glad that you're seeing that, because I think that's the intention. Especially concerning combat. I would say that Mataris and Goran straight up go looking for fights. While Kudai isn't in the habit of seeking combat in and of itself, he certainly has no issue throwing hands.
I can definitely see that.
Keihatsu, though, based on his position in this culture and the skills he showed in this chapter, I can genuinely believe that for all his preparedness on the subject, he does not actually like fighting. That's a pretty marked difference from those who have gone before him.
I don't know that I would say that he dislikes fighting. He's a boy. He's becoming a man. Like, boys like to throw hands.
But that's not I don't get that as a big part of his personality, though.
No, I was about to get to that. It's like he can see the sport in it. To a sense, like he's not gonna go picking fights for the sake. I would say he honestly feels ambivalent toward fighting.
I think it's more the idea. There's a difference between fighting and war, though, and this is what
fighting and war.
He's talking about war.
Okay, all right.
Because that's what this chapter is about.
Okay.
And so,
I was like, are we just talking about fighting, like, in general? Because that can go.
Well, you're talking more sparring. Mm-hmm. He is talking war, and that's very different. Okay. And I think that's also playing devil's advocate for those who come after him, because there's some other opinions. But I mean, up until like a lot of it depends on the character. Mataris, it's life and death. It is basically war.
He treats every battle that he goes into like it's war.
Yeah, and with
Goran's a Saiyan. Enough said.
And then with Kai, you have he knows what he's getting into, and it's like more of a police attitude. But then he loves the sparring. He loves that part, and that's a big part of his personality. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we have Keihatsu, and that's not necessarily the biggest part. Like he's good at what he does, but that's not necessarily a big part of his personality, because he has to be so much more well-rounded in his position. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Another thing that really stands out to me is how he takes the time to talk to his soldiers following the death of the other scout. I feel like most of your other characters would have compartmentalized the loss and moved on, if even that. Keihatsu, on the other hand, took time to mark the passing of a human life, one that he was honestly responsible for. Not only that, he did what he could to make sure those who were left behind would not feel any undue guilt, and even provided them a way to deal with the inevitable grief when it really comes to set in. He put effort in for them because he viewed them as something just as if not more important than the mission itself. Yeah,
he definitely is. He definitely tries to see. He definitely makes an effort to see the humanity in people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the characters who've come before him, Goran, he's really just there for himself, and then he's there for his significant other.
Goran does good things, but he is a very selfish character.
Yeah, he's very selfish. And then you have Mataris, who's like he's protecting others, but then
he's going about it in a very questionable way.
And then he goes solo, right? Yeah. And then you have Kai, who kind of goes he's more of a team player, more so than the others. But again, he's just he's a kid in survival mode, and he's learning how to do a job. And so he's just kind of there, right? Yeah. Meanwhile, we have Keihatsu, who is, like you said, responsible for others. And he has to take that into account with every decision he makes. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that you're, noticing
with one word, he could send his country into a golden age, or he could lead to its utter ruin. Mm-hmm. And he has to be aware of that in everything that he does. Mm-hmm.
Whatever lessons he's been getting need to be shared with some of the world leaders today. Right? If not all of them. That's very kind. We need more servant kings than politicians. Am I right?
You are not wrong.
I 100% agree with you, my guy. Side note, I feel like you're setting up for this Chio character to make a return at some point. Feels like you spent more time on her introduction than you normally would for a plot device character, if that makes any sense.
The one that's in charge of the border post. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see her again.
Sweet. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I remember her coming back.
Yeah.
So, Oichi is lining up to be the party's white mage. Yeah, pretty much. That's literally, yeah. I kind of figured she'd fulfill that role, if not something similar. But it's kind of cool to see someone without a Pokemon stepping up to help everyone when their society seems to revolve around the functionality of a warrior's bond with their Pokemon. I'm glad that the people at the border station didn't fall under the stupid trope where if you don't have X, then you're not good enough to be a part of the proceedings. Yeah. Maybe the fact that she came as a guest of the warlord had something to do with that, but it was still good to see.
It definitely played a part in it.
So in this world, is there some kind of is there prejudice against people who don't have Pokemon?
There's not prejudice against people who don't have a bond in and of itself. It's just that if you don't have a Pokemon and you try to apply yourself for certain tasks, then people are just kind of predisposed to thinking that you'll fail.
Huh, interesting.
Like being a soldier, if you don't have a Pokemon, you're just not going to cut it as a soldier, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, see, that didn't even occur to me because I'm I feel
if you don't have a Pokemon and you want to be a doctor, you can do it. It's a lot more difficult. But so people who have Pokemon are more apt to being able to succeed. So it's kind of like the benders versus the non-benders in Legend of Korra. Not to that level of hostility. There's not that level of animosity. People are just this is the way it is. If you have a Pokemon, people with
more in OG Avatar, not Korra.
Yes, more in OG Avatar, not Korra. There are
because there's not really aside from Fire Nation where there's a little bit more of a hierarchy. I feel like most people are not super judgy. It's either you're a bender, you're not a bender. Doesn't make you a second class citizen.
You certainly have more opportunities if you have bending abilities, but you
aren't looked down upon.
You're not looked down on for not having
it's more of a specialized skill than anything else. It's everybody has the ability to train and run a marathon, but not everyone chooses to do that.
Toph's parents, neither of them are earthbenders, but they are very successful people.
Yep.
And she is a bender herself. She goes on to become very successful for entirely different reasons.
Yeah, I think at least in the time period that the OG Avatar takes place, there's it's more of a specialized skill that you train for or you don't. It's not everyone's an athlete, right? Not everyone learns to swim.
Well, here's an example I can use of myself. The way that I'm physically built, I would make a really good runner. But I never pursued that path because it didn't interest me.
Yeah, exactly. I had other gifts that
I chose to nurture.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because that hadn't even occurred to me. So I was curious how that's set up in your story.
There's not at least in Aurora, there's not that stigma. In other nations, who knows? We'll see.
Maybe culturally that is happening elsewhere.
It could be, but we don't have a lens into we don't have a view into that yet.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my place. Okay. It also speaks to her character of how even though she seems to detest battles with Pokemon, she's still doing everything that she can to help those around her without being asked or seeking a reward in the process. Yeah. That's a theme we have all of a sudden. We have servant leaders, which is, I think, really important because there's very little of that culturally, I think, nowadays. Yeah. It should also be addressed that her internal conflict on how to approach Keihatsu about his apparent decision to execute the war prisoners was very well done. To have her not react at all or to have her stand up to him about it would have felt very forced in terms of either character growth or aggression. You maintained the persona of the hurting pacifist without making it obnoxious or casting the trait aside at any time at the time of convenience. Yeah, we're not having a Katara throwing a hissy fit and crying and wailing, right? She's respectful, but at the same time, she's like, no, this hurts. I don't.
She's like, I was trying to get away from this.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, Though I do have to wonder, having followed your work for so long now and knowing your favorite character arcs, how physically painful is it for you to write a pacifist so deliberately like this? I have to say, okay, so
why'd you have to put it like that?
As someone who has followed his work even longer than anybody else on this platform, this is not the first time he's written a pacifist. And
I don't do it often.
this is much more well done than others he's written in the past. And I will not name the unspeakable novel. Just kidding. When Joe was a teen, he wrote and published a novel.
At least what I'm learning with this, I can apply to the pacifist character that was originally conceptualized.
Yes, and I mean, I think you're going to return to that and revamp that someday. But I think this is much more well done because it's less of a whiny stubbornness and more of a like, no, these are my principles and this is why I'm holding to them. Because I think you have a little bit more empathy for that thought, that ideology at this point in your life.
Yeah. I don't know that I even have more empathy for it. I've learned more about people and how they work.
I know she's not really your character, but I imagine that a lot of what she says and does is informed by your own interpretation of her character. Reminder that I have not played Pokemon Conquest.
Yeah, I would say, like, there's not a whole lot of dialogue for me to work with on her character, and like she gets like some of the most dialogue in the game, which should tell you something.
But it's like one of those typical strategy games, like new face pops up. Hey, I'm here to help. This is my function. I think she actually has the most dialogue like in the game, but even that is very limited. So I can only extrapolate so much. So yeah, like I would say it's not fair to say that her characterization is entirely mine, but I did fill in a lot of the blank spaces. I think the same can be said of pretty much all the characters in the story.
Yes, that's very true.
Right. The battle scene in itself is certainly reminiscent of Christopher Paolini's style when it comes to the viewpoint. Oh, look at you. He picked it up.
I had mentioned trying to do that in the last podcast.
Okay. Of a non-human participant in the battle. Yeah, I'm glad you caught on to that because Joe will mention it later on here, but I'm glad he caught that.
Okay.
It was almost as though we were edging into first-person description of what was happening around us, having to use our imagination to interpret the things that Eevee was seeing as he was seeing them. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I didn't think about it that way. Like,
really?
Like he said, like they say, edging into first person. I didn't think about it that way.
But I mean, think here. You are using very simplified language. Mm-hmm. You're not using the terms, and so we're actually forced to imagine, and that is, I think, something that's super important when you're being creative. You have to leave space for your audience to use their imagination sometimes. That's why, I mean, as an artist, that's why abstracted or non-representational design are important, because you need to leave it open to your audience to interpret certain things, especially for those of us who aren't huge into Pokemon. Like, it was actually kind of cool for me to be like, whoa, what's like
what's running around right now? Yeah,
exactly. And so I had to kind of picture it in my head.
All right, cool.
I think that's a tool that you should revisit and think about workshopping for yourself.
Honestly, like, when writing it, like, I feel like I wrote it to where anyone who is fairly familiar with Pokemon should be able to it's like, okay, like the three heads, it's like, oh, that's a Dodrio. There's a fire bird legs. That's a Combuskin or a Blaziken. Like I felt like I left enough key descriptions to where if you think about it, you'll be able to be like, oh, okay, it's that Pokemon.
Most of them I figured out because at this point, it's like between our kids and just like playing around with Pokemon Go, I was like, okay, yeah, I know what that is.
Okay.
But no, yeah, that works. But I think that's an idea you should kind of workshop and think about yourself. Just like, where in your stories can you give opportunities for those moments, because that's a part of activating that part of your brain that's enjoying fantasy, is using your imagination for some of it. And I think that we're getting so much fed to us in entertainment nowadays that we're starting to lose that skill.
Interesting.
And I think that, like, it's almost a service to your readers to give them those little, almost like as an educator,
make your imagination work for it.
Yeah, and I mean, as an educator, you would call it more of a prompt for higher level thinking.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so just something to think about. I think that's a really good point that he made.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. The commander of the opposing forces also seems like a Oh, did I miss a sentence? Oh, yes, sorry. I like that we got to see 2 different skirmishes in the chapter, one from the human point of view and another from the Pokemon's, giving a much more comprehensive idea of what was happening and being felt by both participants.
Okay, yeah. That was on purpose.
The commander of the opposing forces also seems like a character that will be returning to the story, though I have to wonder in what capacity it will be.
So Chio is, I think it's like one of those grunt characters that you can recruit in the game. So like, there's no dialogue for this person whatsoever. I think I figured out like what.
Is it one of those logic things where like she has a specific Pokemon, she has specific skills, and you can fit her in specific situations?
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I looked at the roster of all the recruitable warriors.
Okay.
And she was one of the ones with a normal type of affinity. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a character that's going to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to base her appearance and abilities off of this.
Gotcha.
And then in response to the enemy commander, so they are a fairly prominent character in the Fire Kingdom. And they are in the game, like they are one of the like side characters in the game.
I'm not sure that I can see him choosing to side with Keihatsu if it came down to it, but it does seem like he's going to have to remember the warlord's kindness, as it were. Is he discussing Chio?
No, he's discussing the enemy.
The enemy.
Yeah,
sorry.
Kanbei, I think it was.
Okay. I don't know enough about this character to say whether or not he's going to infuriate him in the long run, but it seems possible to me. I like it for Keihatsu's character that he let the soldiers live, even if they had chosen death. But I did not have to wonder. I do have to wonder if that decision will bear good or bad fruit.
Well, that's something you have to wait and see.
The closing scene was more cute fluffiness, which I honestly didn't expect to see after the opening scene, given the theme of this chapter throughout. However, I do like how you managed to sort of bring the emotional spectrum back full circle with the closing scene. That's good, because that's usually your goal. And by the way, my vote is that she was absolutely kissing Keihatsu on the head through Eevee. Oh, there's no way that she knows Pokemon biology that well and doesn't know how that would have gone through to him. Pretty smooth move, if I'm right.
You're not wrong.
I look forward to what you bring next to this story. I guess we're going to be meeting some other warlords now. Wonder how they're going to treat Keihatsu in his own house, as it were. Happy writing until the next one.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really thoughtful review. There was a lot to unpack there.
There's quite a few things in there that was like, I did not think about that going into this. So thank you for that.
But that's good. That's why we do this.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. All right, guys. Well, I always enjoy hearing your feedback, and I hope you enjoy listening to this chapter just as much as I enjoyed writing it.
And so enjoy the chapter, and then we will have a follow-up little recap with a couple of readers. Yeah.
All right. So we'll catch you guys in a bit.
A meeting of equals. Takanobu's men returned to the capital of Aurora with their heads held high and their spirits even higher with the victory that their warlord had given them. Having stayed an extra day to make sure the wounded were properly treated, and that Ignis did not have another attacking force on its way, Keihatsu had ordered the company's retreat home, though he had finally received word of a replacement company that would be on its way within the week, having been assembled and the command personally structured by Naoshige. The new captain had been trained by the council member in his youth, and having been trained in combat by the veteran warrior himself, Keihatsu knew the officer would have to be well worth his salt to be recommended by his tutor. In the interim, however, he did order that Takanobu leave 4 squadrons and their lieutenant under the command of Chio, just on the off chance that Ignis tried for another surprise attack. They would also return to the capital when the new company arrived, barring any further conflicts. If the advisor had any issue with leaving a chunk of his personal forces under the command of another warrior, he gave them no voice. Keihatsu knew of the man's loyalty to Aurora, but he found himself wondering more than once if this loyalty wasn't merely an afterimage of the obedience Takanobu had once showed his father. In seeing his conduct on this matter, the young ruler finally felt certain that his retainer's loyalty to him as the new warlord was tied to his own person, and not simply to that of the crown he wore. Oichi had won the hearts of many of those traveling in the company of Keihatsu with her hard work and skill with the medicinal arts. The way that his warriors spoke of her caused the leader of Aurora to find himself more and more pleased with the fact that she had decided to accept his offer to remain in his service. I do hope that Tsunehisa won't make a huge fuss when I make her appointment official. Keihatsu thought from his study desk as the airship docked at the departure hangar of his castle. He heard Evie make a sound similar to a laugh, which caused him to sigh deeply and reply, "Oh, who am I fooling? He makes a fuss over any change to the status quo." "My lord?" Oichi's voice startled him into looking up from his scroll to see the young woman waiting for him patiently at the door to the room. "Apologies, my lady," he said as he stood up and beckoned for her to come in. "I was lost in thought. I didn't see you." "It's of no consequence, my lord," she replied with a sweet smile, a sight seen more often since the witnessing of his mercy with the enemy soldiers. "And I do wish you would call me by my name. I am no noblewoman, and I see no reason to give me such a title. Yes, and I frequent the ocean floors on the back of a Kyogre." Keihatsu grinned lightly. He held up a hand to forestall her protest by saying, "I am no fool, Lady Oichi. I know a noblewoman when I see her, and you are certainly the noblest of all the women I have ever met, save for my mother." The girl reddened with embarrassment when she dipped her head slightly and murmured, "You flatter me, my lord." Keihatsu favored her with another smile before he continued on to say, "I won't ask for any more of your story beyond what you have already told me. I simply wish to see that you are treated with the respect due to you, in regards to both your heritage and your status as my confidant." "Very well, my lord," Oichi replied reluctantly, "but if I might ask a favor?" "Yes," he urged her gently. "Could you simply call me by my name when we speak in private?" she all but whispered. "I've grown comfortable speaking to you in this last week, as strange as it is. However, to hear you call me by so formal a title, it reminds me of times that I have tried to leave behind." "And that makes you uncomfortable?" he surmised, to which she nodded quietly. Seeing this, he said, "As you wish. I will simply call you by your name when we speak in confidence." In all reality, this was no great concession on his part. As the ruler of the country, he was under no obligations to refer to anybody by any title if he so chose. He merely did it as a courtesy to his subjects and ranking warriors. "Thank you, my lord," she said gratefully. A thought seemed to strike her as she then added, "I nearly forgot why I came here in the first place. Sir Takanobu said that we'll be able to disembark in roughly 5 minutes. "Ah, good," Keihatsu said as he stood up, grunting slightly as he stretched his stiff legs. "If memory serves, Warlords Motochika and Motonari are due to arrive sometime this afternoon, which means that we had better get ourselves washed to the scent of travel and battle." He frowned a little bit as Evie came up and sniffed at his leg before recoiling in an exaggerated mark of disgust. In response, he muttered, "Oh, please, you still smell like an Embor." The little creature's ears flattened as he turned his head away from his master, which was as close to an impotent grumbling as he could get. Entitled to the privileges of a king though he was, the young man had washed himself only once while out at the border, saying the wounded were in need of the hot water far more than he. Oichi had not even had time for a proper cleansing due to her seemingly unending work with the injured Pokémon and warriors. As if remembering this fact, Oichi wrinkled her nose a bit and murmured, "I would like a chance to bathe. But do you mean for me to accompany you during your meeting with the other warlords?" "I do," he nodded firmly. "I'm curious to see what you make of the two of them." Surprisingly, she made no motion to reject the idea, merely asking, "Have you ever met the two of them?" "Not as warlord, no," Keihatsu admitted as they began to move toward the exit to the study. "Motochika won the throne of Fontaine in combat 8 years ago. Motonari has been in power for nearly 2 decades. I remember them meeting with my father a few times, and they all seem to get along quite well, though I wouldn't exactly call them friends." "I suppose we should be grateful they aren't coming with hostile intentions, unlike your northern neighbors." Oichi smiled as he extended his arm to her, which she gratefully accepted. "A blessing I hope to never take for granted," he murmured as they left the room. As it turned out, he needn't have worried. About Motochika and Motonari, that is. Upon re-entering his home, he was informed by one of his servants that both warlords had been seen traveling together with a small retinue, less than a day's travel from the palace. There were only 10 warriors in each party, not including the 2 leaders themselves, just enough to meet the minimal standards of a respective warlord's entourage. Certainly not enough to pose a threat to Aurora's defenses. No, as it turned out, the only immediate cause for concern was Keihatsu's eldest advisor. Tsunehisa and Naoshige were both waiting in the hangar when their master, his new friend, and their colleague came down, with the old man looking like something was biting at his tongue. Seeing it, and having a pretty good idea of what it was about, Keihatsu resigned himself to an unpleasant conversation. "Sir Takanobu, see to it that Lady Oichi makes it to the room she stayed in last time she was here, undisturbed," he said in an aside to his advisor. "I apologize for assigning you such a task when you are in need of a respite as much as I, but I will not trust her safety to anyone but you and your men for now." "Your wish is my own, my lord," Takanobu replied gravely, "and if I may be bold enough to add, I will look after her as if she were my own daughter. Tsunehisa's reach will not come to her, you have my word." His master inclined his head toward the man in a gesture of gratitude. Your advisor does not mean me harm, surely? Oichi whispered worriedly. Not physical harm, no, Keihatsu said with a negative shake of his head. But if he had his way, I am certain he would send you away at the first opportunity. I do not intend to give him that chance. Thank you, my lord, the girl answered gratefully. I am only sorry that I have visited this conflict upon your home. It is merely another straw set to break the Nummel's back. Keihatsu sighed as they neared his two advisors. Both of you, go. I shall deal with this myself. By your leave, my lord, Takanobu said dutifully as he led Oichi away from the coming confrontation. Lord Keihatsu, Naoshige said as he and Tsunehisa bowed to their ruler as he and Eevee came to stand before them. Word of your victory was welcome news in the capital. Even now the people speak of your might and mercy in battle. More and more of the citizens have begun to speak favorably of you, as they did your father, Tsunehisa admitted, though Keihatsu noticed the old man's eyes followed Oichi for a moment before they returned to him. You made the right decision, my lord. I only acted with Aurora's interests at heart, Keihatsu replied evenly, feeling the tension in the air thicken despite the cordial exchange. As far as I am concerned, as long as my actions benefit the kingdom, they are the correct ones, no matter what others may say about me. He gave his eldest advisor a pointed look after uttering the final sentence. And taking in a street urchin under the guise of a noble woman, that is to the betterment of our kingdom, the old man replied with a stoic face. So Tsunehisa now is... Hold your tongue, Naoshige, the other advisor interrupted without breaking eye contact with his master. It is my duty to uphold the integrity of the warlord's household according to the traditions of our kingdom, and I'll not shirk my task, even if it displeases our master. Pursing his lips into a thin line, he added, I know our master forbade me to speak of the matter of his marriage again, but I cannot stand aside if there is even the slightest chance that he intends to pollute the royal line with a commoner's blood. Naoshige rarely showed emotion, but he looked angry now, angry at having been dismissed in such a rude fashion by a man his senior in age only, and angry that anyone would disrespect his master, simply because they believed it their right by their appointed station. However, this was nothing compared to the fire he had awakened within Keihatsu, and despite his calm exterior, it showed itself in Eevee. The little Pokemon's hackles were fully raised, and a warning growl lifted his lips to reveal sharp teeth as he settled into a crouch that would let him spring at the arrogant man at the slightest provocation. My kingdom, Keihatsu finally said after a moment of the only sound being his partner's growls. What? Tsunehisa inquired. You keep referring to Aurora as our kingdom, Keihatsu replied, his voice still completely neutral. It is mine to protect. Not Sir Naoshige's, not Sir Takanobu's, not Lady Oichi's, and certainly not yours. It is mine. I have stood at the sides of the last 3 warlords, and now you find yourself standing against me, the warlord stated, startling both of his advisors with the implications of such wording. Before Tsunehisa could formulate a response, Keihatsu raised a finger and continued on to say, You forget your place, advisor. You are only as influential in my kingdom as I allow you to be. He swiftly added, You have ignored my wishes regarding the subject of my marital status. You adamantly refuse to treat Lady Oichi with the respect that I commanded you show her, a respect that she has now more than earned. She has done nothing to deserve such hostility from you, or anyone in my service. To the contrary, she has worked tirelessly in my employ to ensure that many of our warriors and Pokémon were able to see their loved ones again, instead of allowing them to succumb to injuries afflicted by Ignisian invaders. And now you dare to claim that your longevity in the service of past rulers justifies your insolence. By now, the young ruler was showing the barest hint of red in his cheeks, the only visible sign of his mounting rage. Tradition demands that I make sure our history survives, even against the wishes of my master, the old warrior began, but now Keihatsu was having none of it. Traditions are merely fetters fashioned by the dead, his master interrupted. So now I am afraid that it is to come to a clash of ideals between you and I, Sir Tsunehisa. Even now, his voice remained level and quiet, which in some ways was far more frightening than the thunderous voice the Lord Avoki had been known to employ. Now even Naoshige looked disturbed at the thinly veiled implications of what his master was saying. My lord, he asked cautiously. You have before you 2 options, old man, Keihatsu stated, his furious gaze never leaving his elders. Retire quietly with your dignity intact, or face me in battle for the right to assume the throne and uphold your precious traditions. Should you choose the second option, you will shame us both equally with your folly, whatever the outcome. But know that I will crush you as surely as I destroyed the forces of Ignis that dared to challenge my hold on the throne. You cannot be serious, Tsunehisa gaped, Such an internal conflict had not been heard of in Aurora for many generations. Was I not clear? Keihatsu replied softly. Your decision. Make it now, or I will remove you from my council publicly. The gray-headed man opened his mouth, closed it, then bowed his head. I cannot raise a hand to the master of this land, nor can I command my Pokémon to do so either, he said in a subdued tone. I will take my leave from your council in the hopes you will soon come to your senses. A wise decision, his master replied bitterly as Eevee settling down as he did, though the creature's eyes never left the former advisor as he bowed and left the presence of the two warriors. My lord, Naoshige asked tentatively. Yes, his master replied tersely. Speak your mind. Was that absolutely necessary? The older man inquired. He was rude, but he truly does think with the kingdom in his heart. That may be, but I cannot tolerate insubordination, Keihatsu answered. If he cannot find a balance between his principles and his oaths of loyalty to me, should they find themselves in conflict, then he has no place at my table. Should I worry about speaking my mind then? His advisor asked, or will I be dismissed for sharing some of his sentiments? Only if you presume to speak as if your word will be made reality against my wishes, simply because you believe you know better. The younger man replied, I have said it before, but I shall say it again. I will tolerate different opinions, but not a lack of respect. Yes, my lord. Naoshige nodded. May I then speak to you on this matter later on, after you have had a chance to rest and recover from your experiences at the border? You may, his master replied. See me in the private meeting room after I have met with the warlords of Fontaine and Greenleaf. As you wish. Now come along, Eevee, the young man said as he made to walk away. We both need a bath and a repast before our guests arrive. Once he had rested and changed out of his war attire into his formal robes, Keihatsu made ready to greet his distinguished guests. He met with Naoshige, Takanobu, and Oichi in the private tea room beforehand in order to confer how they would conduct themselves. When a warlord from another nation visits without hostile intent, it is traditional that both parties exchange a gift as a measure of goodwill, Naoshige informed his master. These gifts have ranged from simple items that demonstrate wealth to an exchange of servants or Pokémon. I will not be treating my people like objects, Keihatsu said blandly. I thought so, my lord, so I arranged for one of our orphan Pokémon eggs to be given to Lord Motonari, Naoshige replied. He is a scholarly man, fascinated by the variety of Pokémon in our world, and he treats every creature that he comes across outside of battle with much gentility. The infant will be well cared for, my lord. Very good, the young ruler said approvingly. And what of Lord Motochika? He is a warrior without compare in his homeland, Takanobu replied. When he was only 17, not much older than yourself, he defeated the previous warlord in battle and claimed the throne as his own. Impressive, Oichi said softly. Quite so, my lady, but this isn't the entirety of the story, Takanobu said, stirring Keihatsu's interest. According to the rumors, he had never been seen in a battle before that day. Some say that he was raised by the family of the samurai that is now his partner, but whatever the case, one thing that all the stories agree on is that he did all of his training in the wild before he challenged and defeated the former Lord Akaku. Then I take it he is not big on formality, Keihatsu inquired. Not especially, Takanobu nodded. He is known for his belief that battle brings out the true character in a warrior and Pokemon. Do not be surprised if he challenges you to a sparring match, and be wary of accepting. He is not a man to take lightly. Neither am I, but I understand, Keihatsu nodded. What of his gift, though? I thought the sword used by the warlord 6 generations back would be sufficient, Naoshige offered. My lord has never seemed to take an interest in it. You mean the blade that my father used to kill 2 of his concubines? His master asked dryly. Do you think it inappropriate? Takanobu inquired hesitantly. No, give it to him. Keihatsu answered warily. It is a fine piece, even if I have a personal dislike of it. Very good, my lord, Naoshige replied. Glancing at Oichi, he then asked, How shall we introduce the good lady? Takanobu had told him of her hard work at the border, and it seemed to have a similar effect on the man's attitude toward her, something Keihatsu was quietly grateful for. In response to the question posed to him, Keihatsu answered, It would not do for our guest to see a throne with a weakened support structure. For the time being, we shall say that she is my new advisor alongside you two. My lord? Takanobu said with surprise, Oichi appearing equally stunned. Is this a permanent position? I am undecided, Keihatsu admitted. How Lady Oichi conducts herself over the weekend will likely play a role in whether or not she keeps the appointment. My lord, what of the other noble houses? The girl asked nervously. Based on what you have told me, I do not see them reacting well to this. I think Tsunahisa's dismissal will be a lesson in restraint to all of them. Naoshige rumbled quietly. Now that my lord has shown enough resolve to reprimand and shun even an esteemed advisor without wavering, those in less stable positions of favor will not risk his ire. While in the presence of other dignitaries at least, we need not fear a public outburst on their part. What occurs in private is often more worrisome, Oichi murmured. You fear sedition against our master on account of you? Takanobu asked her. Yes. Our accomplishments at the border should render any attempts to undermine me as useless, even if it is done quietly, Keihatsu said with a small grin. Every aristocrat fears the public, even if they will never admit it. Even you, my lord? Naoshige asked. Yes, the young man nodded swiftly. I fear a public with an inept ruler, so I shall strive not to give them one. Before he could add any more, there was a light tapping at the oilskin door. He turned and asked, Yes? Forgive the interruption, my lord, but the warlords of Fontaine and Greenleaf have arrived at the gates and are being admitted now, said his head servant from the other side. Shall I send them to a waiting room, or shall I direct them to the throne room? The throne room, please. Keihatsu answered as he and his advisors rose from their seated positions at the table. We will be there to greet them momentarily. As you command, my lord. Now then, the young warrior murmured as he straightened himself, let us see what these other warlords are all about. Presenting to the royal court of Aurora, the warlord of Greenleaf, Motonari. Keihatsu rose from his throne as his chamberlain announced the first leader, while the nobles in attendance all turned to the double doors in order to get a good look at the visiting warriors. Next to him, on his right side, Takanobu and Naoshige stood resolutely at attention, while on his left, Oichi fidgeted nervously. First to enter was the ruler of Greenleaf himself, dressed in scholarly robes of green and yellow, and a charming smile on his face. Warlord Motonari was a man still in his prime, but the wrinkles next to his eyes and the corners of his mouth made it clear that he would soon be passing into his middle age. His hair was the color of an oak leaf in the prime of spring, and his eyes matched the shade of the tree trunks that supported such earthen beauty. At his side slithered a superior, which regarded everyone that it passed with bright, inquisitive eyes. Following the man was a Grovyle, behind which was his retinue of warriors and their Pokémon, some of which Keihatsu had never seen before. Well met and welcome, Lord Motonari, Keihatsu said as the group stopped at the bottom of the steps that led up to his throne. As my father before me, I extend to you the hospitality of my kingdom. Unlike the citizens of Aurora, the men of Greenleaf and Fontaine would not be expected to bow to him. The warlord stood on equal ground with him after all, and it would be disloyal for the foreign soldiers to display an act of fealty to anyone other than their own rulers. Well met indeed, Lord Keihatsu, the older man replied graciously. I was saddened to hear of Lord Avoki's passing earlier this year. You have my sincerest condolences for your loss. My father was a great leader, and there are many besides myself who feel his absence very deeply, Keihatsu replied. But I find myself strangely glad to hear that he is missed by those outside of our borders. Perhaps this evening we shall drink to his memory, the older warrior suggested, which had Keihatsu nodding quickly. I should like that, he admitted. Thank you, Lord Motonari. His guest inclined his head in a gesture of respect before he and his troop moved to the side as he said, Perhaps we should allow your other guests in now, yes? I doubt it would be wise to keep them waiting for too long, Keihatsu said with a light smile as he turned back to face the entrance of his throne room. His chamberlain, now seeing that his master was ready, raised his iron-shod staff and brought it down on the marble floor to produce a loud crack before announcing, And now, presenting the warlord of Fontaine, Motochika. From around the corner of the grand doors, a relatively young man with a chiseled body stepped through, his pace matched by a powerful, proud-looking samurai. His clothing consisted of dark trousers and a heavy black scarf trimmed with white fur that matched his wild hair. He wore no shirt, which allowed his scarred torso to be seen clearly by all those in attendance, a sight that caused many of the stuffy nobles from Keihatsu's court to turn their noses up at him, though he seemed not to care. His expression was a confident one, though not quite to the point of arrogance. His gaze met the ruler of Aurora's without flinching, his dark eyes like that of a knight at sea without a lighthouse in sight. Like Motonari, he traveled with a retinue of 10 warriors, though they seemed more in keeping with the look of a royal guard, unlike their roughly dressed master. Good afternoon, the man said gruffly, forcing Keihatsu to hide a smile at the informal greeting. See you've kept Aurora looking well, even after your father left it to you unexpectedly. No words wasted, I see, the young ruler thought as the men and women of his nation stirred angrily at the brash address. And welcome to you, Lord Motochika, he replied smoothly, ignoring the discontent of the nobles. I am glad to see that you have arrived safely. Are you now? The other man smirked. Why's that? I'd like to know that the roads of my kingdom are safe to walk, even for such highly distinguished guests as yourself. Keihatsu replied with a small smile of his own. Heh, Motochika chuckled. You sure it's not just because you want to have an ally with forces capable of putting that idiot Hideyoshi in his place? Keihatsu raised an eyebrow before he replied, if we must cut to the quick, yes, that does play a part in it. Perhaps we might dine together and discuss an arrangement for taking down a common foe. My sources tell me that Ignis has been a bother for you too. Samurai and I do our talking with our sweat and blood, Motochika said with a negative shake of his head. Let's have dinner. In the morning I'll see if you're strong enough for me to bother listening to you. Keihatsu sensed that Takanobu was ready to put the man down for insulting his master, so he held up a hand and said in a quiet tone, Peace. We expected him to do something like this. When the other warrior had subsided, his master said in a louder tone, Let us dine first, and then we may speak of battle. I have only recently come from the battlefield near my northern border, and I would like a warm meal and at least one night in my own bed before I think of conflict once more. You took part in a battle against Ignis yourself? Motochika inquired. Apparently the news of Keihatsu's victory had not reached him on the road. So when the young lord answered that he had, the leader of Fontaine folded his arms, smiled broadly, and said, A man willing to risk his own flesh and blood for his people. That is strength and leadership that I can respect. I look forward to seeing what you and your EV can do. I shall try not to disappoint, Keihatsu replied. For now, your warriors deserve rest, and I would be glad of your company at supper. He made sure to include Motonari and his people in the last statement. We would be glad to join you. The warlord of Greenleaf nodded. Your generosity is appreciated. Yeah, food sounds good, Motochika added, causing Keihatsu to hide his smile again. You have any smoked Magikarp? The dinner was delicious, especially for those that had been traveling and eating campfire food, and the conversation proved to be entertaining for Keihatsu, as it was the first time in a while he felt as though he were eating among equals. Oichi was pleasant company, of course, but she was still somewhat nervous of him, thus did not speak to him as a peer. He hoped that would change one day, but he couldn't rush the poor girl any more than he already had. He enjoyed speaking to Motonari about his travels and the Pokémon he had studied, both before and after becoming warlord. His interests went well beyond that of grass-type Pokémon, though he clearly had an affinity for linking to the verdant creatures. Are there any regions that you're particularly fond of, other than your own kingdom? Keihatsu asked him at one point. The three warlords were seated at the head of the table, with the young ruler's advisors sitting next to them, followed by the nobles of the court. I used to frequent Chrysalia in my younger years, Motonari replied. I found myself intrigued by the living habits of its bug-type residents, as many of them show similar habitats to the grass types that called Greenleaf home. That seems like a far way to travel for the sake of mere curiosity, his host mused. Would you not have to go through Violite to get there? My mother was from Chrysalia, so I had relatives to stay with whenever I visited, the other man explained. I'll say, though, I had to be very cautious in the wild. On account of Superior, Keihatsu guessed. She was a snivy and servine back in those days, but yes, Motonari nodded. However, it is thanks to those times that I now sit on the throne of my homeland. Oh? When you are constantly battling Pokémon that have every advantage over your partner, you learn to think quickly and make the most of every little thing that you can possibly turn to your benefit. The older man answered with a smile. I imagine that as the ruler of a territory that attracts many normal types, you would know a thing or two about that. I would like to think so, Keihatsu replied with a small grin of his own. Perhaps I will be able to demonstrate my competence in the subject of quick thinking tomorrow morning. You better, Motochika interrupted as he laid down his eating utensils. Good food. Thanks for the meal. You seem awfully confident of your ability to best Lord Keihatsu, Motonari said with a raised eyebrow. I would be wary of him despite his youth. After all, he is not much younger than you were when you came to power. True, but I had to win the throne, Motochika countered. No offense, Lord Keihatsu. I'm sure you're strong enough, but I've only gotten stronger since I took command of Fontaine. None taken. Keihatsu shrugged. Your words echoed the sentiments of many of my subjects. I did, however, have a noble from my court challenge me for the throne shortly before my coronation. I assume that he quickly realized he had made a horrible decision, the water-type ruler asked with a large grin. Immediately, the younger warrior replied with a smirk. Good boy, Motochika chuckled. I think I like you. But you'll withhold final judgment until after our battle, yes? His host inquired. Correct. Would you care to make things a little more interesting? Keihatsu offered, an idea occurring to him in that moment. You have my attention, Motochika said with a bright spark of intrigue in his eyes. Instead of a battle between the two of us, Why not have some of our men join in the fun? The young man offered. To what purpose? Motochika asked. I don't need to see how your men fight to judge your character. That's all I aim to get out of a battle with you. That may be, but I wish to get something else out of it entirely. Keihatsu replied. I see no reason that we cannot both accomplish what we want in a mock battle, so I ask that you hear me out before you reject the idea. I didn't say I wouldn't do it. Excellent. Keihatsu grinned. You know that Ignis has been making trouble for me for some time now, and I've heard tell they've been doing the same for Greenleaf. Here he turned to look at Motonari, who nodded gravely. My warriors are not well suited to match their flames, he admitted. The only reason that Hideyoshi has yet to attempt a true invasion is because he lacks the numbers to do so. Of the 4 neighboring kingdoms, Greenleaf sported the largest number of warriors, followed by Ignis, then Aurora, lastly Fontaine. What does Ignis have to do with a match between you and I? Motochika murmured. I don't see the connection yet. In due time, Keihatsu said patiently. See, I know that it is a simple matter for the forces of Fontaine to hold off any attempts from Ignis to subjugate them. However, that would change were Hideyoshi to claim Greenleaf as his own. Its army would annihilate Fontaine's defenses with both superior numbers and type advantages, and then the banner of Ignis would be flying over your castle as well. You make it sound as though it'd be easy, Motochika said with a feral smile. It wouldn't be a cheap victory, that I can assure you. The loss of numbers doesn't disturb a man like Hideyoshi, as long as he wins out in the end. Keihatsu murmured sadly. As you say, it would not be an easy win, but it would happen regardless. And with 3 of your kingdoms under his control, it would not be long before my defenses would crumble like a house built upon sand in the face of the ocean. What I fail to understand is why he has split his forces between fighting you and me simultaneously. Motonari said with a slight frown. If he would simply commit to one course of action or the other, he could defeat whichever one of us he targeted. My guess is that he is too impatient for his own good, but I say that we should simply be grateful that his mistake has spared our kingdoms for now. Keihatsu replied gravely. Turning back to Motochika, he then said, I aim to forge an alliance between our nations, Lord Motochika, and I know the only way for me to win your respect is to show you what Eevee and I are capable of in battle. However, I would also like to see the capabilities of your men so that I might know how to best utilize our combined strengths, should a union prove possible. You're talking like you'd be in charge of such a combination, Motochika said, that feral grin back on his face. What makes you think that I put myself or my men under your command? Meet me in battle and I will show you why, Keihatsu replied with a confidence that he did not feel. I may be young, but I am not inexperienced, Lord Motochika, and I will demonstrate that fact to you on the morrow. Motochika's smile widened as he answered, I look forward to it. And I look forward to seeing the bravery and fortitude of your Pokémon, Motonari said as he rubbed his hands together excitedly. A direct battle between 2 of Ransai's mightiest warriors is sure to bring out a truly magnificent sight. After dinner was completed, the gathering moved to another hall that sometimes featured as a ballroom for galas. There was soft music playing in the background, and there was a space cleared for those who did wish to dance, though nobody had yet felt the urge. Keihatsu and the other warlords stood a bit closer to the musicians, as to make it harder for anyone to eavesdrop on them. Just in case, Naoshiga and Takanobu stood close by with their Pokémon at their sides, ready to escort away any curious ears. Oichi stood with them, glancing around herself nervously, as if afraid of being attacked at any moment, despite knowing full well she should be safe in the castle with Tsunehisa gone. Feeling the time was right to do so, Keihatsu turned to Motonari and said, I believe it is custom for warlords to exchange gifts when meeting for the first time as a sign of good faith during seasons where conflict is absent. You know your traditions well. The older warlord nodded, looking impressed. Far better than Lord Ginchiyo of Violet, anyway. Apparently, she makes me look like a gentleman's scholar, Motochika snickered. Sharing in the smile for a moment, Keihatsu then beckoned to his servants, who were standing nearby with gifts in hand. Turning to the ruler of Fontaine, he said, For you, sir, I have the blade Zekken. The owners have never been bested in combat so long as they wear it on their hip. Now I give it to you. You sure you want to give this to me on the eve of a battle between our men? Motochika chuckled. Might prove to be hubris. I think that you and I both know that there is more to battle than carrying superstitions with us, Keihatsu answered in kind. Regardless of the myth surrounding it, the blade is a fine one. May it serve you well. With that, the servant stepped forward and presented the weapon to the water-type ruler. Motochika reached out and grasped the hilt and scabbard before drawing the blade partway from its sheath. It was a katana with the hilt cast in gold wiring and bearing the image of an Ursaring's head, the partner Pokémon of the original owner. As he examined the keen sword, he murmured, This is a fine piece. Very fine indeed. Sheathing the sword, he looked up at their host and said, Thank you for the gift, Keihatsu. I'll be sure to take good care of it as long as I am the Warlord of Fontaine. You are most welcome, his host answered graciously. Turning to his other guests now, he continued, For you, Lord Motonari, I have an orphan Pokemon in need of a home. I know of your generosity and kindness when it comes to the Pokemon under your care, so I thought the little deerling might find a place in your home. As he spoke, the second servant stepped forth, bearing an egg that rested on a purple pillow. Once Motonari had taken the egg with a delighted look, Keihatsu added, My resident caretaker informs me that it should be hatched sometime in the autumn. Ah, my favorite time of the year, Motonari said with a broad smile. I shall see to the little one's rearing myself. Thank you very much, Lord Keihatsu. I do enjoy this type of work. You are correct. Thank you, sir, his host answered with a matching smile. I am glad to hear that this Pokemon will not be lacking for a home, or for proper care. Since you showed us yours, guess it's only right we show you ours, Motochika said as their men came to take the gifts away. At the click of his fingers, another of his servants stepped forward with 2 Pokemon trailing him, a Vaporeon and a Wartortle. As soon as the man stopped walking, he gestured to Keihatsu, and the water-type evolution stepped forward, sniffing curiously at the young man. Hello, Keihatsu said with a pleasant smile as he knelt to reach out his hand to the creature, his palm facing down for Vaporeon to sniff at curiously. Are you going to stay with me now? I heard about your Eevee partner, Motochika explained as the blue Pokemon let out a bubbly warble and sniffed at Keihatsu. About how he's descended from my predecessor's Vaporeon. I tracked down this young one in the hopes he'd take a liking to you. His cousin to your own partner. They share the same grandfather. Do they now? Keihatsu murmured as he sent a mental command to Eevee, who was currently playing outside in the gardens. He is very handsome. Thank you, Lord Motochika. Don't mention it, the other man said with another grin. Hopefully your current partner won't take an issue with him. Samurott doesn't play well with others, which is why I've never taken on another Pokemon. I had wondered about that, Motonari admitted as Keihatsu began to stroke Vaporeon's scaly head. You are no doubt strong enough to handle 2 or 3 partners, possibly more. No doubt, but I prefer to keep a good link with the one that's been with me since childhood, Motochika replied. Samurott and I are as brothers, and that's enough for me. That is a bond many would be envious of, Keihatsu said as he felt Eevee drawing closer. You are lucky. Don't I know it? Motochika laughed. Not that Samurott would ever let me forget it. I know what you mean. Keihatsu chuckled as he straightened up, just in time for Eevee to come bounding into their meeting with his tail wagging. Ah, there you are. Say hello to your cousin, will you? He indicated Vaporeon as the mentioned Pokemon cocked its head at his smaller relative. Both Pokemon took a moment to sniff at one another before Keihatsu felt the sense of great excitement emanate from his partner. The two then tackled each other and began to wrestle playfully between the 3 of them, causing the warlords to laugh again. Okay, Keihatsu said as Eevee managed to get his cousin in a sort of headlock. Take it outside if you must play rough. Eevee let out an excited bark and hopped off of his cousin before the 2 raced out of the ballroom, several nobles letting out sounds of surprise as they made their rapid exit. As he watched them go, Keihatsu felt his eyes roll back slightly as a flood of new sensations stole into his mind, and his breath caught as if he had suddenly been robbed of it. He staggered slightly for a moment, but Motonari caught him up before he could fall. Are you all right? The older man asked as he began to right himself. I guess Vaporeon took a liking to me after all. Keihatsu chuckled lightly. No, I'm fine. I'm just not used to receiving the feelings and sensations of 2 partners as opposed to the 1. Ah, so Vaporeon accepted you, did he? Motochika guessed. Good for you. I imagine the next time you tangle with Ignis, you'll give him a rather nasty surprise. I just hope that I can keep up with the both of them, Keihatsu replied, though he was beginning to adjust to the new information his mind was receiving. I didn't expect it to be so easy to form a new bond. Creating the bond isn't so difficult, Motonari informed him. It's maintaining and strengthening the link that's going to be hard. I've spent years doing that with Eevee, Keihatsu murmured. It seems quite a daunting quest to start all over again. You'll do well, Motochika asserted, surprising the young ruler. I may not be completely convinced of your strength just yet, but I know a genuine Pokemon lover when I see one. I wouldn't have trusted Vaporeon to you otherwise. What would you have given him if Vaporeon had not taken a liking to him? Motonari asked curiously. That's for me to know, Motochika smirked. And speaking of giving, I believe that it's your turn, my friend. So it is, the grass-type ruler replied. Glancing at Keihatsu again, he asked, Are you all right to stand on your own? I'm fine, he nodded quickly. Thank you. Very well. Motonari said as he beckoned to his own servant, who stepped forth with a small, ornate box in her hands. This is my gift, an enchanted ring that enhances your bond with your Pokémon, allowing you to strengthen one another more easily in battle. As he spoke, the serving girl opened the lid of the box to reveal a silver band with a glowing emerald in it. May it serve you well in the days to come. Thank you, Lord Motonari. Keihatsu said gratefully as he took the ring and slipped it onto his right middle finger. I will make great use of this gift, I assure you. Already he could feel his connections to Vaporeon and Eevee growing stronger, so much so that he could consciously repress some of the feelings he was receiving from them. So long as you do. The older warrior replied with a gracious inclination of his head. Like Lord Motochika, I am of the opinion that you will take great care of any Pokémon in your charge. An expectation I will do my best to uphold, Keihatsu replied as the band struck a new tune. It happened to be a song that he was fond of, as his mother had taught it to him when he was a child, so he soon felt the urge to move along with the beat of the music. Turning back to both warlords, he said, If my lords will excuse me, I feel the need to go stretch my legs. With a certain advisor of yours? Motochika asked with a knowing grin that set Keihatsu's face to reddening a bit. I do not believe I know what you are talking about, he muttered. Yeah, you do. Go on, Motonari chuckled. We'll be fine on our own, I assure you. Thank you. Keihatsu made his way quickly to the trio of advisors, intending to ask Koichi for a dance, but he was stopped by one of the nobles from his court, a middle-aged man named Kurogiri. My lord, the man said with a deep bow, how are you this evening? Well enough, all things considered, he answered, forcing himself to put on a pleasant face, despite having been thwarted. How does the evening find you? Weary from a long day's work, but like you, I cannot really complain, the older man replied with a smile. I'll not take up much of your time except to make an inquiry. That is? I and several of the other nobles were wondering as to the purpose of your meeting with Lords Motochika and Motonari. Kurogiri replied. Is it true that we will be forming an alliance with our neighbors to crush Ignis once and for all? Nothing has been decided yet, Keihatsu answered evasively, wondering how to get the noble to back down without being rude. When it came to him, he added, but should the time come to march, the lords and ladies of the court will be among the first to know. After all, you and your sons and daughters will be in line to command portions of the army. Yes, of course, the man said, looking uncomfortable now. I will be sure to have the able-bodied people of my household ready to march at the first sign of trouble. Only... Yes, Keihatsu asked while hiding a smile, now that he had discombobulated the prying man. I have one son, Kurogiri explained, and I would not wish to see my household name put at risk should war come to us. Now Keihatsu's brow knitted together in anger. Mark my words well, Sir Kurogiri, he said in a sharp tone, though he did not raise his voice. If we go to war, which I can assure you is the last thing that I desire, then I will expect every house to commit every resource that I ask for, which may include all of your children. No one household is more important than the whole of Aurora to me, and I will take every measure that I can to ensure the safety of the people we are sworn to protect. If you wish to curry favor with me, I suggest you remember that our duty is to the people in our charge, and act accordingly. Otherwise, do not pester me. The older noble read it angrily before he sang in a lower tone. I see that you lack your father's tact, my lord. At the very least, he knew how to pick his battles, and his allies with more care than you seem to. Keihatsu's eyes narrowed before he grabbed Kurogiri by the collar and drove his knee into the older man's stomach violently enough to make him collapse on the floor, groaning at his lack of breath. Several people nearby let out cries of surprise and backed away from the young lord, who glared at the people surrounding him. I believe it is time to make some things clear, he said in a loud voice, even as the musicians went quiet and Kurogiri continued to clutch feebly at his stomach. Looking at each of the nobles in turn, he growled, I am not my father, clearly, so I heavily suggest that you all stop expecting me to be. Furthermore, stop expecting the status quo to go on, because I will be changing the way my kingdom operates. I may not have wrested the throne away from the previous warlord, but make no mistake, things will be different. If you cannot accept the changing times like my former advisor Tsunehisa, then leave my court so that I may find people who are willing to adapt to my way of ruling. I have no time for petty wishes or inflated egos. From now on, birthrights mean nothing in my kingdom. If you want my favor, earn it with merits born of your individual efforts, and not the fruits of your forefathers' labor. Oh, and stop trying to arrange marriages of convenience. I assure you they are only inconvenient for all parties involved. For a long moment, there was such quiet in the hall that one could hear a pin drop. Finally, One of the younger men laughed a little awkwardly and said, "Well, I can see someone has had a little too much to drink." This got several of the other nobles to laugh along with him. That is, until they saw Keihatsu's countenance darken even further as he walked up to the man that had spoken. Before he could say a word, his master delivered a vicious kick to the fork of his legs, causing several people to recoil in both fear and sympathy. As the man writhed in agony, Keihatsu turned back to face his guests and deadpanned, "Anyone else?" Fortunately, the others had caught on to the fact that he was in no way joking at this point, so they all kept quiet. Seeing this, Keihatsu nodded with satisfaction and announced, "Good. Now, bear in mind what I have said tonight, and we shall get along famously. For now, enjoy the party. Toritsuke, if you could clean up these two messes, I would be most appreciative." At the last sentence, he pointed out Kurogiri and the noble that had laughed, prompting his head servant to direct his staff in order to get the two men out of the way of the others. Meanwhile, the band began to play again, a little awkwardly at first, but after a minute the hall filled with the conversations again, though in a much more animated fashion than before. While this was happening, Keihatsu's shoulders had sagged as he made his way over to his advisors with a glum look on his face. "I suppose I've made a fool of myself," he muttered as he came close to Takanobu and the others. "I cannot speak for the others, but I enjoyed that immensely," the other warrior said with a broad smile. "Beg pardon?" "Sir Ichigo is his brother-in-law," Nashige reminded him, the ghost of a smile touching his own lips, in spite of his best efforts to maintain a stoic expression. "They have never gotten along. I have long suspected of him of infidelity toward my sister, but I cannot prove it," Takanobu grumbled. "I have wanted to do that myself for ages, but somehow I feel as though this was more satisfying." Keihatsu cracked a little smile, but he noticed that Oichi seemed troubled, so he moved closer to ask in a lowered tone, "Do you think I went too far?" Off to the side, Nashige and Takanobu went to keep curious nobles away from the young lord until he was ready to address them all again. "Your people needed to see that you are different before they could truly accept your rule, and you have certainly done that," she murmured quietly. "Only time will tell if you have chosen the right battlefield for establishing your reign." "I'm not interested in what time will tell just yet," Keihatsu insisted. "I want to know what you think." Oichi was quiet for a moment before she answered, "I think that you are a very fascinating man, Lord Keihatsu. I have never seen someone be so kind to his own soldiers and their enemies, yet so harsh with those who seek to be his ally in politics." "Perhaps it is because I expect better of my people," he told her solemnly. "I want them to be better than those that have gone before them, so that when we all leave this world, it will be a good place for our descendants to call their own." "A good philosophy," she mused as she turned toward him to look at him directly. "One that I believe will make you a good warlord in the future." "My actions have your approval, then?" he asked her hopefully. "I know that I would not have had the courage to act as you did, so yes," she nodded. "You are a braver person than I, so I must admire you for it." "That relieves me," Keihatsu said as he felt his shoulders lift a little. "And since I'm feeling extra brave right now, might I ask you for the honor of a dance?" "What, me?" she squeaked as she turned red. That is to say, I do hope that you will say yes," Keihatsu urged her with a nervous smile as he reached out a hand to her. "I'm not quite sure that I'll ever get the nerve to do this again if you decline." "Then I shall say yes," she replied with a timid smile, "because if I say no now, I doubt I'll ever have the courage to accept again." So saying, she gave him her hand, and he was surprised at how well her palm fit into his own. "Then let us be frightened together," he said as they began to walk toward the dance area, ignoring the curious, and sometimes hostile, looks that they were receiving. "I much prefer that to being frightened and alone, don't you?" Oichi asked. "Yes, I do." So it was that the two of them were among the first to dance at the gathering, and the last ones to leave.
Hey.
All right.
What's up?
Not much.
Not much. Long day at work.
Practicing upstairs, so.
He said his mom was like practicing karaoke.
Hey,
upstairs.
gamers. Were you talking about Fortnite? Actually, no, I'm not even going to pretend you were talking about Fortnite. I just love bringing up my favorite game whenever I can.
We were talking about karaoke, actually.
Yeah.
You see, I too have insomnia, but unlike you, mine's not caused by depression.
Much like the world of Warcraft, none of you are here by choice anymore. Unlike WoW, however, you are being held here by me, not the need to escape your empty freaking lives.
Yeah. My insomnia is caused by staying up all night and playing Fortnite. I stay up and I go to Tilted Tower. I don't actually play Fortnite. I don't know any other places.
I mean, Tilted Towers, I think, was a thing back on the OG map, but that hasn't been a thing for a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
nah.
I think.
I don't play it either, so I wouldn't know either. I just.
I mean, hey,
Welcome to this podcast. As you can see, I have knocked over many chapter titles because I get so tilted at the towers.
I mean, hey, if you're ever gonna hop on Fortnite, now's the time to do it, because as of this recording, they've got the Last Airbender gang going on. So.
Oh yeah, I guess I should probably hop back on.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, even if you don't ever play too often, like, just
to get the
those
Avatar
skins.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, they
You
have
know,
it.
I
So
missed out on the Sonic skins that Fortnite had, so.
Oh, there were Sonic skins? Oh, cool.
There were.
Okay. Also, we
No, there
need to
weren't.
go. We also. I've never seen Sonic skins on Fortnite, but we need to go to IHOP because Silver sent us a picture of the current
I've been
IHOP
there.
menu.
Yeah. No,
I
see,
did-
here's the funny thing.
Or was it Joe?
If-
Sorry.
wasn't me.
Yeah, no, it's So I mean, I still loved it, and I still just like saying like, hey, I want to get the Shadow Chaos Control pancakes.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's already just like items that pretty much already exist on the menu, but just I say reskin, but it's just
Even
basically how you
so.
order them. Like, don't get me wrong, I loved it because it was like, oh man, this is kind of cool, but like, it's basically just the
I feel
IHOP
like
food. That's
it
basically
would
what
be
it
a
is.
good, like,
Yeah, there's
birthday
nothing
surprise for a
truly
daughter or
special
something.
about it. It's just
It's just fun saying it, like, hey, this is Sonic,
Yeah.
It's just for novelty purposes.
as one
Now,
does.
now that we have all once again established that we're all uber nerds,
Yay!
yep, we be in good
Pokemon.
company here. Pokemon.
Pokemon.
I fell asleep for 3 hours to Pokemon today.
Yep. Yep.
And it
Nice.
literally
I
reached
had
the
a
point
12-hour
where the
shift
television,
Ooh.
the
that'll-
television literally just timed out and turned off, and the kids were like, "Mom, did you turn off Pokemon?" And I was like, "I was sleeping until you yelled at me, but okay."
Good
Well, you don't turn off the Pokemon. That is an unacceptable
One does
action.
not simply.
I'm such a nice mom. I let my kids watch Pokemon for like 3 hours while I slept.
Did you say Pokemon or Pokemon?
I mean,
My mom for like the past like 15 years now has like had this like best Pokemon shirt that she like uses like as pajama shirt, and
that's
it's just
Oh,
always like a,
hilarious.
That's
Cute.
awesome.
yeah.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
I have nowhere else where I can say that, so and you just I don't know, the Pokemon thing just like
You're like,
kinda,
I've been
made me
holding
think
onto
of that.
this one obscure piece of information for all my life, and here I can finally use it.
Yep, that's basically my life right now, wondering
Cool.
exactly where I'm going to use all of these obscure information. Like getting a job? Who needs to get a job in the film industry, which is really hard right now when you can memorize all of this other stuff. Like
Are you
Pokemon.
Etashi no ketare gase osonoka.
And
I mean,
and
like, hey, if
that's
you
an Ace
can-
Attorney reference. Yeah.
I mean, hey, if you can just like memorize the entire lore of Warhammer 40K, just you can Henry Cavill it.
Oh, that's right. He did do that, didn't he?
Yep.
Forgot about that.
Yep. Dude, anytime
Yeah.
you see him, anytime you see him talking about it, he's like giving such like excited child energy.
So you see, Sonic the Hedgehog's real name is Ogilvy Maurice Hedgehog, and we just need
Yeah.
to go from there.
That's only in the Archie canon, though.
Yeah, I know, but it's still more fun to say than like anything else. But
Really
anyways,
quick,
I
though,
would like
is
to
the
try.
recording
We're talking about
software
Pokemon.
Is the
Yes.
is the recording software picking up our voices?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So it
Yeah.
has it. So the
Okay.
way that it works. So the way it works is that it has. So the way that it works is it has us recording on one soundtrack, and then them and anything that's happening on the screen is on a separate soundtrack.
Okay.
So I can adjust that individually during editing.
Perfect. All
Okay.
right.
That's
Well,
smart.
then we're good to go.
Yep. We're all set.
All right. So, real quick, heads up. Just due to the nature of how I read this chapter initially, I don't have that many notes.
Uh-huh.
No
And
worries.
that's not to say that I don't have things to say, because I do.
You
but
always
it's just
have things to say.
I was reading this like in between working and all that, and because we were initially going to record on Sunday, and so like I didn't really have time to like
Yeah.
make a whole lot of notes. But
Yeah,
I still have
things
to say
happened
it's
and-
just
yeah.
not nearly as extensive as like the last time we did this.
Nah, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I got the
like,
chapter
just
pulled
over-
up
like,
just in
just-
case I need a reminder. So
Okay, yeah. So like just overall, like what how did the chapter leave you feeling by the end of, or like throughout and by the end of it?
So
happy.
Happy.
Yeah, happy because for one thing, it ended on a dance. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that was pretty cute. That was like Disney Prince moment.
Disney,
No, we kind
Disney
of
princess.
just had
Yeah,
a tantrum, but it was a well-warranted one. So.
Yeah.
Disney
Yeah.
should do more Prince style movies. I
Right?
think.
It's because they're afraid of masculinity. There, I said
They
it.
are,
I'm sorry.
unfortunately.
They really
but,
are.
Yeah.
I mean, let me look something up. Because like, I mean, the close thing that I can remember, I don't know if like how, like again, this is like back in like 1990, who knows when, but like, would you qualify Aladdin as like a Disney Prince movie?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
that's pretty good
Yeah,
in terms of like
Aladdin and
all things
Tarzan.
considered. I don't know. Maybe that's
I
me.
Yeah, he kind of faked it till he made it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
I mean,
Cinderella.
that's based on what everyone
So
does. Let's
Cinderella,
be
yeah,
honest.
Cinderella. No, Cinderella never claimed to be a princess.
No, she didn't.
She definitely
She
married
dressed
into
up
it.
as
But
one.
no, she didn't
Yeah.
dress up as one. No, it
What
was
do you
just
call
all the
that
eligible.
tiara, yo?
No, it was all the eligible.
know.
It was all the eligible women of the kingdom.
No,
like
I
like
know.
royalty
Yes.
wasn't the only ones who would have worn crowns at that point in time. It would have been like anybody who could afford a tiara would probably be wearing it to that event.
I was.
Okay, now you're making me think of like,
Anyways, sorry.
yeah, Tiana wasn't a princess until she got married to.
There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you
Yeah,
go.
that was like one of the more legalistic endings of like any Disney movie. Let's
That
be
was
honest.
the last like 2D animated Disney princess movie they did, wasn't
I
it?
know
It
it was awesome. It was
such
a fun
fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you seen the clips of like the robotics that they're building for the new ride? To
No,
replace
I'm trying to stay blind to it for now, so
Okay.
that
just preface, they've been showing some clips on Instagram, and it's a little bit uncanny and a little bit freaky. So
I mean,
Okay.
yeah. Well, okay. Well, anyways, you said I'm gonna follow up with your question. I'm gonna try something different. I always say what I like and what I don't like. I'm gonna try and not do that and make pure observations. This is just like a different style that I'm trying. Like instead of like, oh, hey, I really liked it. I'm just gonna like point out what I saw and see how well that goes. But anyways, you said how did this chapter make you feel?
Yeah.
And what was one of my notes that I had here? Hold on, wait. I literally had the chapter pulled up. I need to pull up.
No worries.
It was interesting the way that you decided to go with this. And again, like that ending with the dance was really nice. But one thing that I kind of felt like in this chapter, I was kind of like feeling this like with a lot of the story up until now, but this chapter kind of solidified it, even though it's only like chapter 4. The dude Kei, he feels a lot like Hikari from Your Hero. And you kind of get that like in writing like different stories, like with the different characters you write, you kind of like put a lot of the same attributes into like different characters.
Yeah.
But like just during that entire and there were obviously different examples of this throughout like the past 3 chapters as well. But the most notable I saw here was like when he literally went and picked a fight with the people who kind of like went against him. That's not me like, how do I phrase this? It's not something I didn't see coming. It does feel like a lot of this character is a lot more of Kai.
I'm actually going to argue on that and say that no, Kurdai will pick fights with villains very readily, but he actually kind of goes out of his way to avoid fighting people that are supposed to be on the same side as him.
What about the media?
The media he tries to ignore. And
Does he though?
Are we forgetting that entire like 2-month segment where like everybody was taking the piss at him and he did nothing in return? Like he literally
what we're doing.
He literally had a pepper bomb go off in his face and he was just like, okay.
Okay.
No. And here's another difference. Here's another difference between Keihatsu and Kurdai is that the way that they get angry is that you'll notice that Keihatsu, the only time he's raised his voice so far in the story is when he's in a battle. Like even when he got mad, even when he kicked the other dude and punched the other guy out, he didn't raise his voice the whole time.
it was scarily low, right?
Not even. He doesn't even pitch his voice lower. He just what's supposed to be a little more intimidating. Well, what I'm trying to be more deliberate about is that what's supposed to be intimidating about him is that like he is conducting himself he's conducting himself and his vocal mannerisms very consistently, no matter what he's feeling, whenever
and very
he is in his
deliberately
own
too.
court. Say again.
And very deliberately as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His speech is very, very deliberate. He hardly uses contractions when he is speaking in a public setting or even among his advisors. The only time where that kind of slips is when he's in battle and when he's with somebody that he is comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's just the entire thing of like, oh man, he's kind of, I mean, not super socially awkward to the point that Karai was, but maybe it's just that like, oh hey, he's just kind of, and then every time someone like gives him crap, it's like, okay, he's gonna turn into low anger Arthur fist meme man. I don't know. Maybe that was just an observation that just popped out to me, and I do see what you're saying with the points that you're like, oh hey, the entire 2 month section with Kai, but I don't know. It's just, and again, I said like it's when you're writing something, you're having multiple stories with multiple original characters. They do kind of bleed personality traits in the others, if that makes sense. I'm guilty of that too, a lot of the time. But
I mean, I can definitely see the similarity. I can definitely see the similarities between them in the sense that they both have a very, very strong and stubborn sense of what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
And they act according to that. Just the way.
Unlike Mataris the Red Swordsman.
Yeah, he takes it a little bit too far is his problem. These guys more like how do I put that? Like Mataris is kind of like rules exist to be broken, whereas Kurai and Keihatsu are more about trying to work within those rules and maybe maybe bending the rules a little bit if they need to.
Sure. Well, I mean, with the context of Pokemon Warpath, technically speaking, there isn't really like an established law. Like the only law that exists is what's set down by like the region's warlords. Correct me if I'm wrong in that sense.
I mean, there are like it'll go like there'll be more on this as the story goes on, but like there are preset laws that have existed for a long time. The warlord can choose to change them if they so choose. It's just like how many people do you want to upset while you're doing it?
Sure.
So
like, I mean, that even made me think of like I think I mentioned this last time, but like a character concept I had where it was like a guy who wanted like to make a more not like a heavy set legal system, but wanted something more like rule based I don't know. It was just an interest. Again, it's an observation that I'm making.
Yeah, I'm hoping at this point people are kind of starting to get I'm hoping that at this point people are kind of starting to get the sense that like, you know, it's very much a kingdom ruled by the elite.
Yeah,
right? And the common people have very little say about that, about how things go on.
Well, they need to get good.
Yeah. And Keihatsu's like he's seeing this, and he's like he's kind of starting to test the limits a little bit because he is the king, but you know he's only been the king for a little while, so he's trying to A, figure out his own power structure, and B, he's gonna have to figure out how to start enforcing stuff under his own authority as opposed to the stuff that was just left to him by his father.
Sure. Yeah.
So he's kind of in this interesting area where he has the authority, but he's not he knows what he wants to do with it, but he's testing how far he can take it. Yeah.
He also needs to kind of establish boundaries with all of the nobles at this point too.
Yeah, like Oichi says to him at the end, she's like, you need
shouted out
a
new law like in the middle of them right after he pummeled those two people.
Oh, well, like, I mean, like I was saying, like, Oichi tells her, she's like, you needed your people to understand that they're not gonna get that they're not gonna have your father.
Things are going to change.
Things are going to change.
Starting with this.
They need to see him as the warlord, not Avoki's son as the warlord. They need to see Warlord Keihatsu, not the son of the previous warlord.
Hey, question about that actually. It's kind of unrelated, but what was the name of the other like the previous warlord to the other region? Was it Greenleaf or was it Fontaine that was
from Fontaine, Akaku?
Yeah, is that another Bionicle?
Yeah,
reference?
it is.
Oh, which mask is it?
X-Ray Vision, Kopaka's first one.
Oh, nice. Yes.
I love that you got that reference. I never would have known.
Yep.
No.
Silver for context. Kopaka
straight up when the fight against Ignis is happening, there's a town called Takoro.
Oh my! I can't believe I missed that.
No, it hasn't been shown yet. I'm like,
okay, I'll look out for it.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, this ain't gonna be the last Bionicle reference we're gonna be seeing in this whole thing.
Hey, it's fan
all
fiction,
right.
so you might as well get away
yeah,
with
I'm like,
it while you can.
I mean, what I love about the names of Bionicle and all that is like, and the setting of this story is that like the names are arcane
Japanese
sounding
enough?
enough that I can just throw them in there and they sound perfectly at place.
Yeah.
They're not Japanese enough. They're more like they come from more like Polynesian languages actually.
A little bit,
So-
yeah.
Like
No.
what was
So-
it that Toa meant? What was it?
Toa means warrior.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the Bionicle language that translates to hero, you know?
Yeah.
So
But yeah,
Mhm.
either way. Okay,
Mhm.
so something you guys won't have heard, but that's being done in the audio version is I'm giving different regions different accents.
Okay.
So probably some of them probably gonna sound better than others. Like the big one. So like if you listen to the last podcast, there's not a very big difference between the Ignisian and the Auroran accents. The big difference, and you kind of have to listen for it, is that the Ignisians are more deliberate about how they pronounce their T's. Because so I'm from New Mexico, and we tend to pronounce our T's as a D sound almost.
Mm-hmm. And then if it's at the end of the word,
like a very light kind of tap,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
and if the consonants are at the end of a word, we very rarely enunciate them well.
That's correct, yeah. So for the Ignisian accent, I kind of laid back to what I remember hearing when I was growing up in Virginia. So I'm going like an Eastern Coast accent on that. They're more deliberate on how they pronounce their consonants in particular.
Forget about it. Anyway.
That's more Jersey, Silver.
I was gonna say, I was like, no, we're not
I mean,
going
it's still
Jersey with
East
their.
Coast, so.
We're going like Southern New England coast.
Okay. All right.
I know I had
Spider-Man.
And then
I have no idea what he actually went with, but when he was reading it to me,
So
I
the
just
Fontaine, the water people, Australian. The grass type people, British, because all British people
Wow.
drink tea.
Way to break down an entire culture into the aspect of they drink tea.
Well, to be fair, it's supposed to be based on like a Japanese kind of setting, and the Japanese language dialects can be pretty diverse sometimes, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then he was like, when he
I was trying to workshop them a little
yeah,
bit.
initially
It was hard
when he
to
was
keep track
reading
of
it to
them.
me, he started doing like a Texas accent, and I was like, no, for the love of God, no, I can't do it.
Can you
I'm-
try a South African accent, maybe?
Like, what are we talking? Are we talking like Wakanda?
The most prominent example I can think of is Flint Harp Longgold from the DuckTales cartoon.
The
I
Scottish.
haven't seen that show. I'm sorry.
Think of our friend.
That's not
Rod.
Scottish; it's South African, actually,
Friend Rod.
or at least originally.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Originally
Ooh,
South
that would
African,
be-
but then he switched it to Scottish.
Okay, no.
We
I have
do have
so
a friend
I-
from South.
I have a couple
we have
of
two
friends.
friends from South Africa.
That accent would be difficult for me to do because it is similar to British, but it's not the same. So one of the things that I was
to them recently either.
Yeah, well, one of the things I was going to do was I was going to make Motochika, the warlord of Fontaine, I was going to make him sound New Zealand while everybody else from that country was going to sound Australian.
Yeah, just talk like a
but the
stormtrooper.
differentiations were very difficult for me to cycle through, so I just kind of was like, okay, they're all Australian.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because like it's a very subtle difference, and it's honestly difficult enough keeping track of the different accents between British and Australian because those are similar enough. So I was like, yeah, that's too much for me to juggle at
Do you
one
mean
time. I
like
can't.
do you mean like received pronunciation British, like the Queen's English pronunciation kind of thing, or do you mean-
yeah.
or do you mean outskirts of London, like where you can go Cockney or?
No.
No, I'm not going. No, we're not doing Cockney.
Well, I'm gonna throw something out there. I don't know if you're gonna accept this or not, but I'm just scrolling through the warlords listing because I forgot basically most of them, if I'm being
Yeah.
perfectly honest. But I see the appearance of what's her name, Nene or Neen, however you pronounce that.
Nina,
What was that? The
something
poison
like
type
that.
or flying type? It's kind of she
She's
has
the
gold
she's
at,
the
and I
ghost
can't tell
type
it.
leader.
What? One more time?
She's the ghost type.
Really?
Oh wait, no, wait. Is she the one
I think
with the Golbat?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Oh, sorry. She's poison type. You're right.
Yeah, okay. What the heck
Wait,
do
wait.
people say that, hey, tell Pokemon, hey, you're looking stronger, aren't you? I'm expecting the Pokemon to run, hey, you're spot on, I'm on the XP share.
No,
Oh, that's right. I remember that Sword and Shield Scottish. Yes.
But anyways, now I don't know. Scottish accents are fun sometimes when you're doing them right. Sometimes you can completely butcher them.
I'm like,
but
I want, like honestly,
did,
I would love to do like the electric types as Scottish or something like that. The problem is, I don't think I could do it well.
I can do a Scottish accent.
Just watch some videos and get the practice.
Yeah, that's what I'll probably end up having to do for a lot of the accents I'm planning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to be. Accent. Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's a lot more difficult to convey it on paper without like making it detract from what's happening in the story itself. Sure. The most I can do is like try to incorporate it into the lingo and the vernacular
and the spelling.
But there's only so much. There's only so much that I can do, like in an introduction with that.
Sure.
And like to
anyways,
these guys, it's not weird.
Couple...
I mean, to these guys, it's not weird to hear these accents because they're just like, oh yeah, these guys are from Fontaine. That's how they sound.
Sure.
Let's move on.
Hey, question.
Yeah.
Question. Which region is Violite again?
That's the electric type region.
That's the what?
The electric type region.
Oh, okay. So Ginchio is electric.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she's partnered. Right. Her perfect partner is a Luxray.
Ooh. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, by the way, just going through there, I like the SAO reference with Zekken. The name of the sword.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Dude, I'm having so much fun with all these little Easter eggs that I'm able to throw in with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was I gonna say?
I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to prompt with. I mean, I have a couple of notes. None of them are like super extensive, but
you can go ahead and hit me with your notes. I did have a couple of things I wanted to follow up with. But
sure, real quick. Like, this is like a lot more of a political based story, and so like there's like always those pleasant yet hostile exchanges that happen, and we saw that like a lot more like in the ballroom scene, like when it didn't get like outright physical. But the reason I bring this up is like I'm literally like before I read this chapter, I had recently rewatched it's this one movie called Crazy Rich Asians. I don't know if you've ever watched that or
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It's a really good movie. It is a very good movie, but basically it's very similar. There was like, oh hey, there's all of these pleasant-esque kind of exchanges that's happening, and then but it's also like you can totally tell that there's like this subtle, like very intense tension. Hostility underneath, and some of it's more subtle than other. It's just I don't know. I watched the movie like literally like a week before reading this. It's and it reminded me of that. It's a great movie. Honestly, I would totally recommend it. It's a great it's a good insight into different ways of thinking based on, because like I mean I don't know, I feel like everyone like, oh hey, everyone like should have the same way of thinking, like, but that's kind of like not the reality of it. Like if you go to different parts of the world. I've never heard anyone
frame that movie that way. I've had a lot of my family members recommend it because we have through my stepmom's side, we have a lot of first generation Chinese immigrants, and we have, you know, and that part of the family is a little bit more wealthy, and so it's really funny because I guess a lot of our family members have recommended that movie to me because they're like, oh my gosh, it's just like our family, and I'm like, really? Okay. So
the way I see, like,
it's a good movie. It's a very good movie.
That, from whenever I hear them talk about it that way, I'm like, that's like how Fools Rush In applies to my family.
Yes.
Great movie.
Okay.
What was I gonna?
That was just a note I threw out there, and I thought that was the way it's written is very interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna say if I like it or not because I'm trying to refrain from that for this particular review.
But it stood out to you.
It stood out to me, yeah.
Okay.
And then another thing that's kind of like in that same vein, but not 100%, is that an interesting. I'm gonna just read you what I have verbatim because like I can't formulate my thoughts right now.
No worries.
An interesting sample of the themes of Generation 5. Interestingly enough, a lot of the base Pokemon Conquest doesn't, like the original game, doesn't deal a lot with the themes of truths and ideals. While this specific example is more of a clash of ideals rather than ideals against truth, I still think it's relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so it's interesting that you bring that up because, you know, Zekrom being one of the main antagonistic Pokemon, I did want to do something more with the idea, with the ideals versus the truth theme. And that's going to become more prevalent as the story unfolds. So I'm glad that you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad that like you're already thinking about that as you're going into this.
Sure. And another reason I thought of that is because I have, in order to try and like get my mind to like stop stagnating and like switch between, because like you know how I am. I say I'm going to write something, then I end up not, and then I get tired. So I'm trying to like go back to my Pokemon Black and White one shot that I mentioned to you, like back in December or something.
Yeah.
I've gotten further on that one. It's almost finished. I
Nice.
keep saying like I'm gonna finish it soon, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know when that will be. For all I know,
it's like that. It's like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's just how I am with writing at this point. So
Yeah.
But anyways, and then there's one last and then I only have like 2 more notes that I wrote down. The second one, I forget. This is referencing a very specific part of the chapter, and let me see if I can remember. Let me see if I can find it because I have it right here.
What was I gonna?
Yeah, that's okay. I can't find it, but basically, wait.
Like, what part? Like, what's going on in the story? While what like that stood out to you?
I don't know. I think it had something to do with like with Keihatsu basically not approving of his council or anything like that, and like not being afraid of like any kind of retribution. And it's like, it's what they're gonna do against me. And I just wrote down my notes. Insert Roman Emperor and noble houses joke here.
Fair enough. Yeah, but again, like you know, you're right to think that, but you have to remember something. A, he is 16 years old. B, he's kind of riding high on his first victory here. Right? Like, and he's using it to, like you know, it's a good thing for his country. He's keeping his country safe. That was the main point. But he's also now able to use it as political leverage to kind of throw it back in the faces of the people who were naysayers. So he's kind of riding on that high a little bit.
I mean, yeah, but everyone does eventually.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that that's going to pan out. I'm not saying that's going to pan out well in the long run. But I'm trying to explain like where he's coming from in terms of his psychology approaching this.
There's consequences.
Sure. And then my very last. This isn't really a note on the story itself, but I did want to throw this out there because this is literally the first thing I wrote. Literally page 1. Basically, Keihatsu makes a passing joke reference to Kyogre, and I just have written verbatim in my notes. New hate because it makes me want to go and actually write that Kyogre one shot that I had planned. So
I swear I wasn't taking a dig at you when I wrote that.
I'm like, there was, because I remember like asking like, oh man, the two, one is going to do with Reshiram and the other is like Kyogre. I really want to do that, and I'm like, okay, this is okay.
You're like, this is feeling oddly personal.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all I have written down. I think I have like lots more thoughts, but I'll go ahead and like wait unless Joe Cohn has anything else he wants to say, or if you have anything else you want to prompt, because I'm gonna try and take more. Again, I'm just spitting out observations rather than my if I liked it or not. But I just want to.
Okay.
I'm gonna take like more of a backseat during this podcast for relatively, even though I just took up like I don't know how long, like 20 minutes of time.
That's okay.
Anyways,
like I wanted to point some stuff out that I noticed in the story as well.
Yeah, go.
So, yeah, like you know how my review style is. It's like I look at the chapter and go scene by scene, sort of, and just give my thoughts on like what's happening, and like if I have any like more specific thoughts, I say it then. And so it's interesting that this is the first time we get to see an actual partnership form between Keihatsu and the new Vaporeon.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the first time that's happening, so we get to see what it looks like for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that it almost overwhelms him. Well,
because remember, like in this version of the story, like they
you upped the seriousness and the stakes of it.
Anything that any damage the Pokemon receives is felt upon the warrior. I almost said trainer there. I'm like, wait, this isn't the main line. And you know that results like the basis of that is a very powerful psychic connection essentially. So like. They kind of have to like repress the sensations that they're getting sometimes, like the physical damage that is inflicted upon them. They can't do anything about that. You know, that physically appears on them, but because of their link, they also like get its general. They can also get like a general idea of what they're feeling physically. And you know they can feel what their partner is thinking at a given point. So imagine like you're already sharing sharing all your brain cells with another organism. Throw another one on top of that,
Yeah.
So like there's a reason why in this world
I
there's
am
not
Doctor Three Brains.
So there's a reason in this world why there's so like most warriors only have one Pokemon partner.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's very difficult. Like, not only do you risk more damage in battle, you also, like, have more sensory input that you have to deal with.
Well, I mean, my entire thing, I was just surprised, like, at how essentially quick the process was that you, or at least the way that you portrayed it, because I don't know, the way that I read it, it was like, oh, hey, it just happened with, like, literally little to no effort.
So, the reason I did that was because in the game, when you're trying to link with Pokemon, like, sometimes it goes over very well, like, you can do it in, like, one turn, and it's like, okay, that was easier than I thought it was going to be, but then you try to approach some other ones, and it's like, you're having to chase them around the map.
Sure.
So, like, it's not going to be that,
played,
it's like,
so.
it's not that easy for everyone, and it's not going to be that easy every time. But sometimes, sometimes you just meet a person and you click.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's my defense for that.
Something positive to look forward to once Oichi finally meets her Jigglypuff. So
Yeah, there you go.
I just find it how you chose the interesting word choice of defense when I wasn't even saying it was a good or bad thing.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I have to naturally be on the defensive with you whenever you're reviewing stuff at this point.
Oh my gosh, what is this? Just we're like, oh hey, it's time. We're gonna do the review. It's time to put the defenses up.
Yep.
Going to put up the 3 walls of bossing same.
That's exactly what's happening here.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, again, I have nothing else written down. I don't know if Joe has any immediate thoughts or if you have any prompts.
One of the things I wanted to touch on was how you talked about how there are a lot of similarities between Keihatsu and Kurai.
Yeah.
So I noticed that myself, actually, and I actually pretty heavily revised this chapter during Keihatsu's during his arguments with the older advisor Tsunohisa.
Oh, like near the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah, because originally, like I was gonna have it. Well, originally, what was gonna happen is he was just gonna go off on the guy, because like again, he's 16 years old. He's just come off his first battle, and I was gonna have like the emotional stress of that kind of all catch up to him. But then I was like, that doesn't seem in keeping with the character that I've portrayed thus far.
Yeah,
and. Like, just due to the fact that, A, he is a different person, B, he was raised to handle these things differently.
Yeah.
Like, he would have grown up knowing what it would be to lead a military setting at some point.
Yeah. This isn't a kid. This isn't a cop kid. This is a ruler's kid.
But this is a ruler now. He's not the prince anymore. He is the king.
Yes, exactly.
And I had mentioned something about this to an effect in an earlier podcast, was where there's a quote about how someone says that anyone who must declare himself king is no true king. And like going back and rereading what I had written, I was like, okay, he's not using as many words, but he's like basically shouting for everybody to hear, listen to me, I'm the king, instead of just acting like it.
Sure.
So I needed him to speak and to act with like as though he has the imperial birthright to command these things.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
He can speak and make word law. Like that's the power that he holds. Now, obviously, he's trying not to abuse that, but he does need to act with that confidence in mind. Is what I'm trying to get through with this character. So I was like, his anger needs to be a lot more subtle in this. Otherwise, he's not going to be as effective as I want him to be. People are just going to see an angry kid sitting on the throne.
Sure.
Right? They're not going to see a king sitting on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to be aware of that. Like he has to be aware of that too. Like he has to be very aware of what he's doing all the time. Like one of the things about Keihatsu is that there are very, very few actions he's going to take without at least considering at length the consequences that could come about. This is one of those moments where he kind of glazes over it because he is riding high on his victory. But
plus it's a party. People are supposed to be enjoying themselves.
Yeah,
so.
There's that. There is that, and that's during the second confrontation. But by the time the second confrontation is there, there's multiple reasons why he snaps a little bit. Is like, okay, He's like, okay, A, you're pushing my buttons. B, I just came back from battle. I'm tired. I really don't want to be throwing a party, but I'm doing it because it's my job. C,
Sure.
you're potentially embarrassing your king in front of other kings. You don't do that.
Not with that attitude.
I mean, like we'll get more into this later on, but it's kind of implied that there are warlords who have killed for less.
Yeah.
So like that kind of speaks to the that kind of speaks to the set, like as more time goes on, you'll come to understand like how restrained
Silver.
he actually. Like
it would have been so much better if it was like the other way around, like in terms of order of events. But
that would be that would fit better, but it's still funny. What I was gonna say was like the more the time goes on, the more we'll get to see like how restrained Keihatsu actually is, like in the way that he treats even his enemies, even his political enemies. Because like we've covered how the last warlord handled people who annoyed him.
Mm-hmm.
He just straight up slaughtered them.
That's what we call an oof moment.
Yep, but like, and again, Keihatsu doesn't want to be that. He's trying to be his own person, and in his opinion, he wants to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So there's a lot more of this like character, like not character.
I mean, again, I see what you're going for, and I see what you're saying. I don't know. I'm still feeling a whole lot of Karai, and maybe it's just because I was reading Your Hero Academia for a long time, and honestly, I haven't read it in quite a bit because I've been busy, but I really want to. But and maybe it's just kind of that. But I do still feel like a lot of his personality, for lack of a better phrase, kind of like
but that's
in
good
there.
Feedback too, because it's good to say, oh, even though you revised this, like there's still some of the same vibes coming off. So
to be fair, I mean, I will say that with the kind of story you are inherently going for, there is going to be that kind of character bleed over, because if we're stopping and looking at both Your Hero Academia and Pokemon Warpath objectively, or rather as objectively as humanly possible, yes, they're like Pokemon Warpath is about like they're both very similar stories in the sense of like a character essentially coming into their own while facing like several hardships. Granted, they're in different forms of like villains and heroes, and you could arguably say that about any story, honestly. But I feel like I don't know. I can't really find a good way to describe it, but it's almost like it's quote Scott the Woz. It's like seeing a cloud. I know one when I see one.
Okay.
But seriously, does that make sense? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
I can definitely see what you're saying.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to ask is how did you guys like the introduction of the other warlords?
Let me get back. So, I'm gonna go ahead and look for it. I don't know if Joe Cologne wants to say anything first.
Motonari and Motochika. Yeah, that's their names.
Yes.
Okay.
Who's this one?
So, Motonari was very interesting.
Yeah.
That's the Greenleaf warlord.
Yes, that's correct.
Very scholarly. I can already see a very similar design, I think. Wait, does he actually have a picture in the game?
Yeah, there is a picture. Do I want to go ahead and send it, or
you can if you want to.
I'll just go ahead and like do their.
Yeah, go for it.
Here is what's his name, Motochika. Is it
Motochika? Okay.
Yeah, the water.
I need it.
Motochika's the watered one.
Yeah.
Like, give me a moment.
Have either of you
keep on talking? I'll just go. I need to find
Have either of you seen Black Clover?
What about Black Clover?
Have either of you seen Black Clover?
I've seen like the first 10 episodes when it first came out.
Okay.
I haven't.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Fair enough.
The only thing I remember is like a few episodes after the Black Bowl. After he joined Black Bowl, and I'm like, oh hey, this is basically just Fairy Tail, but with different magic.
It's like the cast of Naruto meets the rules of Fairy Tail.
Kind of, yeah.
That's interesting.
That's kind of.
But yeah.
Anyway, so what I was getting at with that is that the Wizard King, Julius, Motonari, the Greenleaf warlord, he is gonna basically. I'm kind of modeling the personality after that a little bit, because there's supposed to be this insatiable curiosity about Motonari. Like that's kind of what fuels his campaign, where you're supposed to collect like 100 Pokemon because he just wants to learn about them.
Oh, sorry, I was getting a pick image. Who would you say he was modeled after in Black Clover?
King Julius, the Wizard King.
Did we ever? Okay, yeah, I don't think I got to the point of meeting
You do meet him, and like I really like his character. He has like this very irrepressible energy and excitement, and very inquisitive. Like you'd think that someone of his position, like you're gonna be like, oh great, who's this a-hole? He's gonna be one of the people making things difficult for the characters. It's like no, he's just genuinely a nice dude, and he like gets excited whenever he sees a new kind of magic that he has never seen before.
Just nerds out.
He's a giant nerd, and I really I was very drawn to that character. And for Motonari, who's supposed to be a scholar, who's supposed to have a very inquisitive mind, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna try and model that personality a little bit after that. Like he's not as like
so different to what I had in my head. Oh my gosh.
Me too. I never would have pictured him looking that way.
That's funny.
I envisioned Motonari with like round rimmed glasses and like
Same.
like a slick back gray ponytail or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
I did age him up a little bit.
Okay.
So like that's like what he would have looked like when he first became Warlord. I have him aged up in this story because I wanted to have a Warlord with a little bit more experience. Like he's not old, but he's definitely been through the ringer a little bit.
Yeah, and as for Motochika, he looks like somebody out of Clavier Gavin's band.
Okay, so that outfit that you're seeing
something.
is not the one. So he has two outfits in the game. The outfit we're seeing right here is not the one that he's wearing in the
because this is the one that like came up. So
okay, yeah, that's his.
So this is his upgraded outfit.
There's a second one. Are you talking about like his quote unquote evolved form?
No, that is his evolved form.
No, this is his base form.
The base form has black and white hair. It doesn't have blue and gold.
No, it's
no because the evolved form is supposed to look more like Samurott.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Nope. The base the base form is the base form is the one with the black and white hair, which is what I described him as in the story.
Yeah. Okay. This isn't screen sharing properly, but basically, I have on the site that has like the warlords plus their evolved forms, and here I'm just gonna post in the. Give me one moment.
Here we go. Got it. There it is. There's the original Motochika.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. Isn't that second one his evolved form right there? That's what I'm saying.
So for Motonari, that's Motonari. Yeah, Motonari is wearing he's wearing the green and gold version. Like that's what he's wearing. But
that's what I'm saying.
For Motochika, the water type one, the image that Joe Clone just put up, that's what he's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is what I was talking. Oh, we were talking about. I was talking about the Motonari guy.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, yeah, I see. Okay, I see where we got mixed up there.
Yeah. The first part.
It doesn't help that they have very similar names.
Yeah.
I honestly, for a split second, like when I was reading the chapter, I thought that you had like done that intentionally, but then I like completely remembered that. Oh yeah, these are actual characters in the game.
Yeah, well, I mean they're based off of actual historical figures, as far as I'm aware, as well.
So I've heard.
Loosely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Names are the same, but yeah.
Yeah, what was like so yeah, like I decided to give Motonari he's not an evolved warrior. Like those do exist in this story, but they're incredibly far and few in between. But I just like the aesthetic of the evolved outfit, so I was like, I'm gonna give him that, and I'm gonna age him up a little bit.
Sure.
So he's like in his late 30s, early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Motochika, he's in his early 20s. Or mid 20s.
Yeah, can't wait to see how that sparring match is going to go between them.
Oh, that's fun. I'm having fun with that.
Oh boy.
Yeah. What was I gonna?
I don't know if you had any. Oh yeah, actually another note before you get, because I know that you have another prompt ready, or at least I presume you do. How I think I mentioned this before, but like how much of this story is like written, and when I say written, I mean you have like either the chapter ready or it's close to being ready.
I have a few chapters close to being ready.
Okay, I was just curious because like you had mentioned that you were developing this story for like a year or two.
Yeah. I've been developing this. I've been developing this story since I've been brainstorming this story since like before Daniel was born.
To be fair, we always brainstorm stories, and I mean I've been brainstorming a story for like the past 10 years, and I haven't written it yet.
I mean I've been working on your hero for well over half a decade at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here I am.
But like
my story isn't stuck in hiatus right now. Haven't thought about anything.
That's what we call an oof moment.
Yeah, I do have like the last thing that I remember writing is that I had planned to go to Kirby World, and I have not had the means to do that in written form yet.
Oh no.
Oof.
But
like
before that, I had to do like a side perspective with another character in there and go into another world, and I was like, I tried to be like you.
But
don't be like me. The world does not need another me.
Don't form a gambling addiction. Don't be like me. It's too late for me.
And now it is over.
Now it is over for you.
Good grief! Those videos have no right. Those videos have no right.
Don't you know that if you kill somebody, you get all of their sin points? Yeah, of course I know that, idiot. That's why I'm gonna kill you. Yeah. Wait. No, I don't want to die.
Those videos have no business.
Anyways, so I was just curious.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to figure out ways to incorporate some of that dialogue into one of the stories. I don't care which one it is. I'm just waiting for that moment of opportunity to arrive. And it hasn't come yet, and that kind of upsets me, but I want it to happen.
Nobunaga comes in like after like the first act of the story and sees Oichi's like, "Hey, Bing Bong, hey, what's up? Hey, you're doing a bad job."
I know I'm doing a bad job.
I'm doing a bad job.
Hey, Bing Bong, what's up?
Is that another Snap Cube reference?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, Snap Cube's way too funny. Okay,
yeah,
I've
been watching way too much of them for like the past month now. I don't know why.
I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. Did you have any notes that you were thinking of while the story was developing?
I mean, I really enjoy the details with, what goes on with the link with the Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a lot of, like, personal drama. And it's so funny that we've almost, like, flip-flopped at this point in our relationship. Because for the longest time, the interpersonal relationships are what I've paid attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to enjoy the action as well. So I'm like, yeah, it was a slow but good chapter.
I'm like, yeah, I love writing the action more.
Mm-hmm. But you're getting a lot better at writing the interpersonal relationships too.
Yeah. Like that is a skill that I need to have if I'm going to be a successful writer at some point.
Yeah. One thing that I found really interesting about this chapter, and I think I mentioned this before with a lot of Your Hero Academia chapters, is that not a whole this is a 16-page single-spaced chapter.
Yes.
That's written in 11 or 12-point font, and when you stop and look at it, not a whole lot happens in it. Like if you stop and break down plot-wise, okay, they get back, he basically fires one of his people. He gets the warlords and he gives them presents, and they have a party with someone kind of back talking him, and because not I'm just gonna give an example. In the one shot that I was writing, I'm trying to make as much happen as humanly possible. Well, I'm not trying to make so much happen that I'm just kind of skimming over it, but I find it really hard to write them as lengthily as you would here, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
Without making it seem natural, making it seem like I'm wasting words or anything like that.
With a one shot, you're trying to do more with less.
That's I know, but my point is that I'm trying to get a specific story out and it's just hard for me to write.
Okay.
Not necessarily words, but with trying to give it substance. And yet here I'm seeing again, you have 16 single-spaced chapters of all of this, and honestly, I don't understand. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's really impressive the way that you write, but I just don't understand how.
Well, I think it's important to give yourself parameters on where you're going, and your intention behind it is really important. And so I think we were this is very episodic. If you've watched Downton Abbey, that's kind of the pacing that I feel, because it's we got some crazy stuff going on, and then we get some build up getting to know the personalities, right? And meanwhile, we're watching. We started watching Jujutsu Kaisen recently, and
is that good?
It's I've had fun. So many people recommend it to me, and to me it just feels like a mod podge of 20 different anime tropes just kind of glued together in a funky way.
The art is good, the story's entertaining enough.
The music is great.
Yes.
I love the music.
It is definitely worth watching at least once.
But can I finish my point?
Sorry.
the vibe that I get, and I don't know because I've never read the manga, but the vibe that I get is they are cramming tons of lore into a very short period of time, and it happens so fast you can't even catch on to the lore. Maybe that's just because I have ADD and it's hard for me to pick up on all those little details like you guys do, but I just get this vibe where it's like, wait a minute, what just happened? They kind of explain, because like maybe it's because I'm used to like anime, let's stop and explain every aspect of how this works while I'm attacking someone in a split-second moment, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that's good, but I just think it's interesting, the pacing, because it's almost like someone took a well-written structure, because I can tell there's a structure to the lore, but it's not coming across very well because it's like they're rushing through, and all of a sudden they're wedging all of these 20 million backstories into these really, really short episodes, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Who did what? I'm so confused. And it's like there's all these flashbacks from different people, and it's like, I kind of get what's going on, but I feel like it's rushed. And so maybe I'm just the kind that likes the slow burn lore building because I'm a Tolkien nerd, but it's like I want to understand how the relationships work, where everyone stands, and how the world is functioning before we move forward. But at the same time, you need to have a balance so it doesn't get dry.
So here's where I'm coming.
So
here's where I'm coming from on this. I'm gonna cite the storytelling style of Star Wars. Surprise, surprise, shock, shock. George Lucas
Star Wars sucks.
George Lucas Star Wars specifically. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that.
Not ready.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
So here's what I'm talking about. So when the prequel trilogy first came out, it was negatively received by a lot of the older audiences. Us kids growing up is like, we don't care, it's Star Wars. It's like, and the story itself was good. People were just mad that it wasn't the original trilogy again. That's a debate for another time.
Sure.
One of the reasons I can see the arguments against it, and George Lucas has said as much himself, is that he tried to tell too big of a story in just 3 movies. So with the release, and I'm almost done. So with the release of the Clone Wars as a TV series, we got to see all that expanded lore and all that character development that George Lucas wanted to do, but simply did not have the screen time to do for Anakin specifically.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to put out a story that is just episodes 1, 2, and 3. I'm trying to find a balance between
You're also not pulling an
of the
SAO.
films. I'm trying to find a balance between the brevity of the films and the depth of the show that lends to the movies.
And you're not pulling an SAO by rushing through something that has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I love SAO, but I can't deny that they do kind of rush through that. Mm-hmm. And again, maybe I'll even eventually finish writing my own stupid story, but I'm trying to expand a bit on the lore of Ironclad itself. I've shown you like cool. I don't even know how many chapters I have written at this point. 7 chapters that I've published. I think I've shown you. I don't know.
Are you inventing your own lore, Silver?
What I was going to say was
yes and no.
In terms of SAO, I feel like they hit their stride with the Alicization and War of the Underworld arcs, because they weren't rushing through it. They actually they cover everything that needs to be covered. They don't rush through any of it, but the story is still quickly paced enough that it keeps your interest.
Yeah, they did lose a little bit for Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit, but
a little bit, but it honestly could have been a lot worse.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
At least they're not spending days upon days trying to figure out the murder in the safe zone, right?
Sure. But which I honestly, I'll go ahead and wait on my thing unplugged. Give me one moment. Sorry.
Technical difficulties.
All right, my thing. Okay, can you hear me again?
Yeah,
you hear me?
We never stopped hearing you.
Oh, but I guess my headphones unplugged inside. I will defend the murder in the safe zone kind of arc where they do spend 2 episodes. I don't know how much time they spend in the manga or the novels.
I don't have a problem with that.
But I will say that is one of the more interesting sections, and hopefully as soon as I finish this, if I finish this next chapter that I have written, that I had to do fan art for literally a year ago, even though it's still not written at this point. That was the next arc I was going to do, and because I do genuinely really like that.
Okay, yeah.
I
And then I'm over here like the slow burn Tolkien and Naruto fan, right? Where I like that pacing. That's the kind of shenanigans I want to see happening.
I do too. I'm not knocking that. Please don't misunderstand. Please don't feel like I'm taking the piss on that arc at all.
I completely misunderstand.
I enjoyed it because it lends to character development between Kirito and Asuna. However, on paper, like not a whole lot happens to the overall storyline.
That's true.
It wasn't.
You could say that about like 50% of your chapters in Your Hero Academia.
But exactly, that's the thing. Is that basically is that what you criticize in Your Hero Academia is the same thing that I could criticize about the Murder in the Safe Zone arc. Is that it's technically Deadwood.
Wow.
But it's
all right, yeah, okay, I'll take that.
All right, cool. All right, yes, all right. Finally, I'm able to make a well-reasoned argument for why I do all these things that Silver is able to understand.
Hey, but you know what? Even with his criticisms, he sticks in there.
It definitely took you 5 years.
Okay, you've only been hating on this story for the past year.
Well, I mean, collectively of like everything that I've basically read from you.
That hurts a little bit, man.
Oh man.
Oh man. Anyways.
Hey, they're faithful. I love it.
This is true. I have very loyal readers, and I am very, very grateful for you guys.
I feel like there was something else I was going to say. Writing-wise.
Like about Pokemon Warpath, or just something about my writing style in general.
One more thing about Warpath, and then I have one last thing that I kind of wanted to briefly. Actually, no, I'll talk about like another. I'll talk about that another time because like that doesn't really hold any relevance to Warpath.
Okay.
But was there one more thing about Warpath that I wanted to say? Actually, I'm just kind of skimming through the chapter. I don't think I have a whole lot. Again, like there's not a whole lot that happens in this chapter, like I said. So there's not really a whole lot for me to comment on.
Okay, so I actually wanted to.
I will mention though.
Okay, go ahead.
I will mention though. I liked how consistent you're making Keihatsu when he's going to Oichi for like advice, but also just for just to touch base with how he's acting, because it shows how much he values her, and it's
an interesting thing.
I like that consistency.
Yeah, so what he's kind of afraid of, like he hasn't really put it into words yet, but what he's kind of afraid of is becoming a warlord that people are they genuinely fear for their lives, like they do with Nobunaga. Like if what Oichi is saying is anything for him to go by. And because he knows that because of what she's lived through, like even like he doesn't know her whole details, doesn't know all the things about her past, nor is he gonna ask her for it.
Yeah, he's projecting his fear of that.
Yeah, her fear of that type of ruler. Yeah, he doesn't want to become that. Yeah. So he's kind of relying on her to a degree as a moral compass.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I just have like this one scene in my head just about Nobunaga. Like, and this would not apply to him in any other situation. Meeting up with Keihatsu in Nobunaga's castle, which is the worst. This is neither tilted nor a tower, Nobunaga. Well, you see, it's a gamer pad. Not many girls come in here because I get friend zoned so frequently. But unfortunately, as a gamer, I don't get respect. I'm not a gamer, so maybe they'll respect me. That just makes you a freaking loser.
Oh my god.
That's the difference between you and me, Keihatsu of Aurora. I'm an alpha gamer.
Wow.
Nobunaga's the alpha gamer.
We need to work through.
Where are we dropping, boys?
I
had to banish Oichi to the Hell Dimension because she disrespected gamers.
Oh my god. Yeah, so Oichi's gonna come back riding on a Giratina. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh my gosh.
That would be epic. Oh man.
So I'm gonna throw a wrench in your plans to be objective here, Silver. I was gonna ask. So, we're trying to have guests on regularly, and I wanted to introduce some kind of a rating system, but I couldn't figure out what to use, and I was like, oh, Pokeballs. I'm like, so with a standard Pokeball being the worst, then there's a Great Ball, then there's an Ultra Ball, then there's a Master Ball. Like, what Pokeball would you rate this chapter?
Hey, Mataris, really quick though.
Yeah.
Where would a Premier Ball be on that list?
Ooh.
Zero. Premier Ball's the worst.
No. Premier Ball's between Pokeball and a Great Ball.
Premier Ball's the worst though.
They have the same capture rate as a Pokeball. They just look fancy.
Yeah, I know, but the Pokeball is more iconic looking.
Okay, you know what? You're right. Okay, actually, you know what? Silver makes a good point. So worst is Premier Ball, then it's Pokeball,
Thank you.
Great Ball, Ultra Ball, Master Ball. So you got 5 Pokeballs to pick from.
Okay, I'll let Joe Cologne go first, unless he still needs to think about it, because I have an answer right here.
Premier Ball's the lowest. The highest is Master Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Basically 1 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, okay, real quick, before you, I'm gonna make this even more difficult. Before you answer that,
no.
I want to know what you guys would rate as like a Master Ball for stuff that I have written. Like just so I kind of have an idea of what you're comparing it.
Are you talking about stories or specific chapters?
Like a specific, like a story or a specific chapter that stood out to you enough for you to be like, yes, that's a Master Ball.
Okay, I have a pretty good answer for both of those.
Okay.
But before I do, let me pull this up. You go ahead, Clone. I need to double check something.
Okay, for this chapter, I would put it at least for me, in terms of how well it's written and how interesting it was and how
like
how
much
I
you
engaged
enjoyed
with it. Huh?
Like how much you enjoyed it, yeah?
Yeah, how much I enjoyed it, how well it was written, and I would put it at maybe an Ultra Ball level.
Ultra Ball level. Okay, cool. Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, this is kind of one of the ones that I was a little bit more wary of because I was like, I feel like this could go over well, but I'm also like, again, this is like a new writing style for me, so I'm very shaky on my confidence is a little bit shaky in terms of releasing these. Like, I'm confident that I'm doing a good job. I just don't know that I'm doing the best job that I can, but I'm working.
Yeah.
On it.
I mean, that's valid feelings overall with anything you make. So,
like, and it's interesting because I don't think I realized how uncomfortable I was, for lack of a better term, until like some of the more recent chapters with Your Hero Academia, where I was writing with Mataris again, and like I just like got in this zone, and I was super comfortable. I was like, I fit in here. This feels right. I'm on top of this, and then I come back to this, and I'm like, oh man, I feel kind of out of place here.
Yeah. Sure. With Mataris, you feel at home. That's what I'm trying to reference there.
Yeah. But okay, so what would you like? What chapter or story would you rate as a Master Ball then? Like, just so I have a point of reference for you.
Oh man, you know what? I think for a Master Ball, it would be that one chapter where in a Shattered Fragment, where it was revealed that Saphira was alive.
Okay, yeah.
I was just saying that the other day.
Yeah, like literally, Becca was talking to me about like that.
That threw me for a loop, and I was so ecstatically happy about that.
All right, cool. All right, yeah. I was like,
okay,
if you're gonna give a Master Ball to a chapter, I'm glad that it was that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty, cool.
For this chapter, I think I would rate it. I'll be generous and rate it a Great Ball.
Okay.
I don't really like. I probably would rate it also a Pokeball, not because it's particularly bad.
No, you can be honest with it. Like, I'm not like.
I would say it's between a Pokeball and a Great Ball, and my reasoning for that is that, again, not a whole lot happens in it, but that's not inherently the fault of the story.
Yeah.
It's just the fact, I don't know. We're still learning the character, and it was like this one that's like, okay, this guy is seeming like a lot like Karai, for better or for worse. And there are really good moments in it, but it's just kind of like, this is just a chapter that happens.
Hey, Silver,
and I have to say, Silver, I was actually thinking the same thing, not as a dig, but I'm like, I think as far as your level of achievement, for lack of a better term, I think I can tell that you're a little bit out of your comfort zone writing this kind of thing, and that's why you're doing it, so you can stretch and get better. But
so it was a little bit slow. Pokeball or Great Ball?
I was also between a Pokeball and a Great Ball. I was gonna say Great Ball.
Okay.
But I think that like you're definitely stretching yourself and working on a different genre, which is good. And I think we just need to work on getting that pacing and getting that, mystique. I think maybe if we're gonna have something that lends itself to being more of a slow chapter. A slow chapter.
Okay.
Maybe there's something we can plant in there as far as intrigue or something we're curious about.
Speaking of that, I just had a thought.
Okay, awesome. Just a sec. You want to keep your reader engaged, and so whether it's what's this person up to? What is this going on? There's rumors of such and such happening, right? So you want to do, something, I'm kind of spitballing here, but you have to have something that makes the reader want to come back and say, okay, cool, I could just end here, but I'm curious about that thing that was mentioned or that little moment of unease or whatever.
We have that sparring match that's coming up between the two warlords.
Exactly.
That doesn't happen very often.
Go ahead, Joe.
There's that, but I had a thought when Silver would talk there. I'm thinking like, Silver, would you maybe have enjoyed this chapter a little bit more if he added like an antagonist's perspective portion into it? Like,
no, I don't think I would, because I feel like that just kind of would have broken up the flow of the chapter.
Okay.
Because here's the thing with switching perspectives in mid-chapter. You have to be very careful about how and when you do it, because it has to have some kind of relevance, for lack of a better term. And granted, you could make that argument that if you did it at the very end, then it would have done that. But I don't know. I don't think it would have fit for the tone that this specific chapter was going for.
So in the last chapter, so in the last chapter with the battle where there were two perspective shifts, you see inside of Eevee's head and you see inside of Oichi's head very briefly.
That's more relevant. And that's within the context of this specific scene. This would have been jumping from this scene to a completely separate scene. I
was thinking maybe switch to a portion where we see what Nobunaga's doing.
You have to be very careful with those kinds of transitions because they only work a handful of times.
I was going to say, that feels like something you would do more at the end of an arc kind of thing to set up for the next one.
Unless the point of your story is to actively switch between the perspectives on a very frequent basis, you can only do that a handful of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could argue that he could have done it with not Nobunaga, but maybe Hideyoshi,
Sure. But
Yeah.
So
just
I know that you asked what of your stories I would rate as a Master Ball, but was there another question before? Because I mentioned that I would rate this as a Pokeball.
Do you have a story? Do you have a chapter in a particular story that you would rate as a Master Ball?
So this kind of goes back into what I was going to say, but ended up not saying, literally 10, 15 minutes ago. I think what I would rate as a Master Ball is it's technically two stories, but I'm going to go ahead and say your 2 Star Swords. And there are 2 specific reasons for that.
Okay.
The first one, and this is more of a biased take, is that Star Sword 1 was basically literally how I discovered you. I think I've mentioned this story before, but I was literally just browsing and lazing around when I should have been doing schoolwork, and I was like, oh hey, what's Sword Art Online and Star Wars? I was looking at those, and I found your crossover, and I read that. I'm like, oh hey, this is really cool, and so I started looking at other stuff, and then you started doing your podcast at the time, and then all that, and I just really enjoyed reading that. On a more unbiased note, I think that your characterization of Yui in both of those more prominently in Star Sword 2 for relatively obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I really like your characterization of her a lot more, because with Mataris, with Kurai, and even with Keihatsu in a lot of senses, they're kind of the same. And obviously we had an entire discussion about how they're not, but they felt like very, very similar characters in the sense of you could switch to a different story and you'd have not pretty much the same experience. And that's not a positive or a negative, but that's just on a very, very general umbrella sense.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I understand.
And Yui Kirigaya, the way you characterized her was really, really fascinating. And again, part of that's just with how she was initially made in her original canon. She was an AI who became essentially a human. She's trying to deal with human emotions and all that. And so I just really liked the way that she was written in both of those stories.
Okay.
And so,
all right.
And
cool.
it's embarrassing because when you were in the middle of writing the Empire Strikes Back portion of Star Sword before that was canceled. I remember I was like, what, 15, 16 at the time, and I'm like, hey, do you want to? I have this character here. Do you want to use them? And I sent them in, and I kind of wish I didn't because they are like kind of the most cringe character that I've come up with.
Honestly, I remember that you did that, but I remember nothing about the character.
Yeah, Anyways,
it's for the best, is what you're saying.
They aren't the worst in the world, admittedly, but I was trying way too hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every writer has that phase.
Yeah.
Like that's not really anything. Like you can be embarrassed by it, but it honestly is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on a that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Not related to like this story of the podcast or anything like that. I just want to throw this out there, but like I was wondering, like I'm still working on the Ace Attorney thing. I'm not going to bring that up, but the Pokemon one that I almost had finished, like, and I was mentioning like, oh hey, I'm trying to figure out like how to write this. I was thinking like if you were fine with it, maybe I'll like send you like the 14-page draft that I currently have. It's not finished, but if you like wanted to like give your thoughts, if you're all right with that, if you wanted to like give your thoughts on it. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a bunch. Yeah. Because I don't. Sure. It's one of those things where it's like I keep looking at this and I know how I want to go, but I don't know how like to best phrase or write. I don't know.
You know where you want to go, but
just
you
need a
don't
second
know
perspective.
How you want to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I just need a second perspective. Thanks. But anyways, I have. Unless you have anything else you want to say.
I mean, I was gonna ask Becca what chapter or story she would give a Master Ball to.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh. But Joe Clone stole mine.
I mean,
kidding.
you can say you give the same answer.
No, it was good. No, that was a really cool twist for me. And oh gosh.
While you're thinking on that, the one that I would throw a Master Ball at would be actually the reveal that Crimson was the final boss of SAO.
Yeah, that's a really good
that
one
was gonna be that was my number 2.
Okay. Yeah, because my
second
that was
Master Ball.
that was the thing that I had been building up to the whole time. Like the sister being alive bit, I was like, yes, I was building up for that. I was excited for it. I wanted to see what people thought of it. But the one that I was like really amped for was like the end game, the boss.
Yeah, see, I think those two are of what you have published.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little. It's kind of unfair because I'm aware of.
Oh, so you think the Master Ball is yet to come then?
I really do.
Okay.
Because you were telling me some of your plans, and I just started bawling my eyes out the other day, yesterday actually.
I forgot.
And so I'm still emotionally recovering from learning a twist, or not really even a twist, almost like a closure thing that happens in one of these stories, and I can't really share because it's spoilers, but I think that if it's not those two SAO
that
moments,
just gives us something to look forward to.
yeah, if it's not one of those two SAO moments, it's one of the closure moments / twists
coming up in either one of these stories.
Yeah. I won't let you know which one.
I'm trying to help you dodge it.
Yeah, thank you. But I literally, I mean, without even hearing you write it, I just like burst into tears, and it was ridiculous. And I'm not even in that stage right now, so you can't blame it on that. It was just that good for me personally. So I hope you guys, I'm looking forward to you guys experiencing it as well.
All right. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for the discussion. I really enjoy doing this format of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you
definitely.
Much. Yeah, this was really fun.
All right.
Well, I have to head out, but
time,
yeah.
Then.
Yeah, it's like 11 now, so.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for staying up and taking the time to read and give feedback and just hang out.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys.
No problem. Yeah, hope you guys have a good one.
All right, we'll catch you on the next one.
Watch that video that I sent in the chat, by the way. It's about Nobunaga's historical self.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, we saw that.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.